Chapter 761, The Past. The Green Mountains remained as ever, the red sunsets unchanged through time. After being away for so long, even visiting the Eternal Lands, Su Zimo found that the true martial sacred ground remained the same through the ages. On Green Mountain, the trees were lush and vibrant, taller than when he left, their branches thick with life. He retracted the dark sky tiger and made his way up Green Mountain. At the summit, the view was beautiful. A gentle breeze swept by. A small river flowed slowly, its waters crystal clear. Red carp rolled about within. "Emoer!" One Renyun cried out in surprise and rushed over. "Mother!" Su Zimo called out with a smile. "You child, gone for years and never thinking to come home and visit." One Renyun complained as she hugged him. A coughing sound followed as Su Qingshan walked out from the straw hut. "A man should venture through the world." "You're too soft," Su Qingshan snorted coldly and added. "You act like you know everything," One Renyun muttered. "If anything had happened to Emoer, I wouldn't let you off." Su Zimo shook his head with a wry smile. These two still loved to bicker. "Now that you're back, take a good rest. The heaven's will is starting to form," Su Qingshan said. "Afraid there's no time for that. I just came back to take a look," Su Zimo replied with a smile. "The closer it gets to the moment, the tighter the schedule becomes." "Is there anything your father can help with?" Su Qingshan asked. "No need. I'm heading to the scripture pavilion soon to look something up." Su Zimo shook his head. "You've grown up. We can't control you anymore," One Renyun sighed. "Just take care of yourself out there. As long as you're safe, I'll be at ease." Su Zimo nodded with a smile. He spent the afternoon on Green Mountain, talking with his parents. At dusk, he returned to his own South Goose Mountain. Chuanxiang and Xiaqiu had been maintaining the courtyard all this time. The room was spotless, despite having not been used in ages. With their help, Su Zimo took a hot bath. In the pavilion of the courtyard, autumn winds swept through, rustling the large tree in the center. That night, Su Zimo didn't cultivate. He simply lay back on a lounge chair, enjoying the autumn breeze, and fell into a peaceful sleep. It may have been the most restful night's sleep he'd had in a long time. Silence through the night. As dawn slowly approached, Su Zimo stirred from his slumber. He stretched, and only then noticed that Lin Ruhu had already been waiting in the nearby pavilion. "Brother Zimo?" Lin Ruhu scratched his head and smiled sheepishly. "How have you been lately?" Su Zimo asked with a smile. It had been a while, and Lin Ruhu's aura had grown significantly stronger. Having fused with the celestial tiger tyrant physique, the ferocity and power radiating from him were overwhelming, like a humanoid beast. His skin had darkened to a bronze tone, and he'd grown taller and more muscular. "I've been doing well. I've fully merged with the battle body," Lin Ruhu said. "Maybe when you fight for heaven's will, I can even help you." Su Zimo patted his shoulder with a laugh. "Walk with me around the sect." The two left South Goose Mountain and began strolling through the true martial sacred ground. Lin Ruhu told Su Zimo many things. Between them, there were no secrets. They were the best of brothers. As winter approached, the autumn wind howled through, putting on one last display of strength. "By the way, senior brother, that was recently opened by the sect," Lin Ruhu said suddenly. "Abyss of Life and Death?" Su Zimo recalled. It seemed that every time the battle for heaven's will neared, the sect would open the abyss of life and death for core disciples to enter. Legend said that at the end of the cavern lay Imperial Valley. Imperial Valley was the home of the true martial sacred grounds past emperors and their war generals. Those who could meet the ancestors and receive personal guidance would be greatly honored. But to the current Su Zimo, it was neither here nor there. "Has anyone made it through?" Su Zimo asked. "The top disciples are going crazy," Lin Ruhu chuckled sarcastically. "Xiang Qianheng and Unbeatable Sword Monarch tried multiple times but failed." "Shame," Su Zimo smiled. "You want to try it, senior brother?" Lin Ruhu asked. "I heard from Grandpa that to pass the abyss of life and death, you must comprehend the essence of life and death." "I don't really get it." Just then, A disciple in a blue robe ran over from a distance. "Holy Son," the disciple greeted Su Zimo and said, "The Sacred Lord wishes to see you." "Got it. I'll head there shortly." Su Zimo waved him off. Watching the disciple leave, Lin Ruhu said with a smile, "Probably just wants to give you some guidance. This era's heaven's will is too important to our sect. We haven't had an emperor since Grand Emperor Shen Xing." Su Zimo nodded. He walked around the sect a bit more with Lin Ruhu before heading to Heaven Genesis Mountain. Heaven Genesis Mountain floated high above the sect, suspended in the void by massive chains. It was like a lone mountain, covered in flowers and trees. Su Zimo walked up the peak, along a cobblestone path shaded by thick greenery. He arrived at a familiar riverside. The sacred Lord Xiao was still fishing at the bridge. Nearby stood Meng Qinxue with her sword, respectfully silent. Seeing Su Zimo approach, a flicker of emotion passed through Meng Qinxue's eyes. The impression he had left her once was unforgettable. Her former arrogance had been completely shattered. "You're here." Sacred Lord Xiao put down his fishing rod and smiled at Su Zimo. He still looked young, untouched by time, wearing a blue robe, a little worn but clean. "Sorry to interrupt your fishing, Sacred Lord." Su Zimo smiled. "Not at all." Sacred Lord Xiao shook his head. "So, how confident are you about the upcoming Heaven's will?" "There's no need to be overly concerned, Sacred Lord. Heaven's will is nothing special. Even an emperor is just another realm," Su Zimo replied. "You brat. Been gone from the sect, traveled the world, and now your tone's grown too." Sacred Lord Xiao laughed. Then he said, "But this world, countless people stop at the threshold of becoming a grand emperor. Their bones are stacked high. It's not that easy." Then he shook his head and murmured, "I suppose asking you is pointless. Never underestimate the heroes of the world. Until the fight truly begins, no one knows how it'll end." Chapter 762, Abyss of Life and Death. Hearing Sacred Lord Zhao's words, Su Zimo shook his head slightly. He replied, "What if I said I have 100% confidence? I wouldn't believe it. No one dares be that confident." Sacred Lord Xiao said, shaking his head. "You know about the abyss of life and death the sect opened, right?" "Just found out." Su Zimo nodded. "Go give it a try," said the Sacred Lord. "I'm not really interested in that place," Su Zimo replied. "This isn't my idea. It's the ancestors'," Sacred Lord Xiao said. Hearing that, Su Zimo paused in surprise. It seemed the ancestors were quite attentive to him as the Holy Son. Su Zimo even suspected that the abyss of life and death was opened specifically for him. He nodded slightly and said, "I'll go." Afterward, Sacred Lord Xiao asked a few more questions. Confirming there were no issues, he let Su Zimo leave. Just as Su Zimo walked out of Heaven Genesis Mountain, a cold voice called out from behind him. "Wait a moment." Meng Qinxue came flying through the air. "What is it?" Su Zimo turned and looked at her with confusion. The two hadn't had many interactions. Since the last time she lost to a single strike from him, they hadn't met again. "Fight me," Meng Qinxue said suddenly. "Pointless," Su Zimo replied. "Why should I fight you? I want to see how big the gap is between us now," Meng Qinxue said. Su Zimo shook his head slightly. Before he could answer, Meng Qinxue had already rushed at him with her long sword. Her sword split into dozens of afterimages, with sharp sword energy tearing through the air. Although her power wasn't overwhelming, the sword intent was fierce, even fracturing the surrounding space. Su Zimo clasped his hands. With a sweep, he dispersed all the sword shadows. Before Meng Qinxue could unleash another move, Su Zimo, bored with the meaningless fight, landed a heavy blow to her abdomen with his right hand. Her body flew backward uncontrollably. "You want to compete for Heaven's will like this?" Su Zimo asked. Meng Qinxue struggled to stand after falling, wiped the blood from her mouth, and replied, "Even though the sect only cultivates the Holy Son, who doesn't long for Heaven's will, if I have the strength, of course I want to try." Her face dimmed. She had lost far too easily. Even though she'd been training hard recently, she couldn't even take a single hit. "You're a monster," Meng Qinshui said. "Among our generation, I've never met someone as strong as you. Do you know why you lost?" Su Zimo asked with a smile. "Why?" Meng Qinshui frowned slightly, looking at Su Zimo. "You're like a caged canary, always staying by the sacred lord's side. That's not the path of a true powerhouse. Even if your cultivation rises, your mindset is still lacking. Simply put, you don't have the heart of a strong one," Su Zimo added. "Besides, you've been training under the sacred lord, but even the sacred lord can't beat me. How could you?" After speaking, Su Zimo didn't bother with the thoughtful Meng Qinshui and stepped off Heaven Genesis Mountain into the air. Lin Ruhu was waiting below. "Brother Zimo, what did the sacred lord want?" Lin Ruhu asked curiously when he saw Su Zimo return. "He wants me to go to the abyss of life and death," Su Zimo said. "Then it's probably the ancestors who want to see you." "I'll go with you," Lin Ruhu said. "All right, let's take a look." Su Zimo nodded. The abyss of life and death was located deep in the back mountain of the true martial sacred ground. Usually, this place was forbidden, and no one was allowed to enter. However, since the cavern had been opened recently, even core disciples of the elders were permitted to enter. Even though it was deep autumn and winter was near, a mysterious power seemed to envelop the back mountain, keeping it like spring year-round. The lush forest covered the hills like a sea of green. Following a small path into the depths of the mountain, they soon reached a heavenly river flowing from the north. Its waters were clear and mighty. Many aquatic-type beasts lived in the river. There were coiled giant pythons and ancient turtles basking on massive river stones. There were even fish-headed humanoid beasts walking with steel forks. All these creatures lived and thrived as part of the river. Legend had it the heavenly river was a remnant from when the true martial emperor carved out a segment of an ancient river. The water was extremely rare and special. As Su Zimo passed by, the ancient turtle lazily glanced at him before ignoring him again. After crossing the river, a narrow canyon appeared ahead. It resembled a crack in the sky. The path was so tight that only one person could walk through at a time. "You ever been inside the abyss of life and death?" Su Zimo asked Lin Ruhu.
"No."
"My grandfather said I'm still too weak," Lin Ruhu replied. "Told me I need more tempering." The two entered the crevice and walked for about 5 minutes. The view gradually opened up, and people began to appear around them. As soon as Su Zimo arrived, the once noisy surroundings fell silent. "The Holy Sun is back," someone said with a grim expression. "Of all times to come back, he chose this one, how convenient," another disciple said coldly. "But he might not make it through the abyss of life and death either." "Holy Sun." The people around greeted him unwillingly. After all, they were also top talents of the sect, and it was hard not to feel bitter being overshadowed. "Why hasn't anyone gone in yet?" Su Zimo asked with a smile. The abyss of life and death was located in the heart of the canyon. It resembled an overturned bowl. It was oval-shaped with slopes on all sides. At the front, there were 2 pitch-black cave entrances. One had the word life above it. From the outside, you could see blooming flowers, sprouting trees, everything vibrant and growing. The other entrance had the word death. Inside was silence. The flowers and trees had all reached the end of life, withered, decayed, and finally reduced to rotting fragments, decomposing in the air. "Everyone's been sent back out," Xiang Qianhing said awkwardly, seeing Su Zimo's puzzled look. Beside him, Sword Monarch's usual indifferent face softened slightly. "This place isn't about strength. Only those who truly comprehend the mysteries of life and death can enter. Since the Holy Sun is unmatched, why not give it a try?" Some joked nearby. "Yeah, with how powerful the Holy Sun is, there's no way he'd be rejected," others chimed in. Seeing them pile on praise, Su Zimo simply smiled. Chapter 763. This world has great rivers, Va mountains. "You're all truly useless. Since you're not capable of entering, why are you still loitering here?" Su Zimo spoke calmly. Hearing his words, some faces changed, but no one dared to lash out. We don't have the ability to go in. Why doesn't the Holy Sun show us how it's done? Someone retorted. At least let us be convinced. If I want to go in, I will. If I don't want to, I won't. I don't need to prove anything to anyone, and I don't need your approval, Suzumo said blandly. Everything I do is because I like it. Got it? Moron. Hearing such humiliation, the disciple looked extremely uncomfortable, gritting his teeth and avoiding eye contact with Suzumo. I asked you a question, trash, Suzumo said again. Heard you, the disciple answered after a moment of silence, gritting his teeth. Suzumo scanned the surroundings and said, all of you, know your place. If anyone has a problem, I'm here in the sect. Challenge me anytime. Beat me, and I'll give up my title of Holy Sun. Don't act like you're not convinced. When none of the core disciples said anything, Suzumo sneered. Cowards. He walked to the entrance of the abyss of life and death. One path said life, the other death. After a moment's thought, Suzumo stepped into the death cave. Beautiful things never last. As soon as he entered, his foot stepped into emptiness. It was as if he had fallen into a bottomless abyss. All he could feel was his body suspended in air, endlessly falling. It was pitch black inside. Suzumo had no idea how long he was falling. Eventually, his body landed on a desolate plain. Suzumo felt his body pinned down by some mysterious force. He couldn't move. In front of him, a child carrying a hoe slowly walked toward him. The child didn't seem to notice Suzumo. He casually stopped in front of him. He took the hoe off his shoulder and dug a deep hole in the ground. Then, he pulled a seed from his pocket and buried it in the pit. Once the pit was filled, the child stood in front of it, motionless. Suzumo felt as if time had suddenly accelerated. Scenes began to play rapidly before his eyes. A violent storm arrived, the rain nourishing the earth. After the storm passed, the seed sprouted and broke through the soil. Because time was sped up, all of this played out in seconds before Suzumo's eyes. The child grew into a teenager at a visible pace. Time kept speeding forward. The seedling grew under the sunlight, eventually becoming a sapling. The teenager became a young man. The sapling grew into a small tree, then into a towering one. The young man became middle-aged. The tall tree began to age. Branches decayed, leaves withered. Many branches had rotted and could no longer grow. The middle-aged man became elderly. Due to old age, he sat on the ground, quietly gazing at the ancient tree. Wind and rain, scorching sun. One day, the old man closed his eyes forever. The ancient tree also fully decayed. When spring came again, no new leaves grew. Together with the old man, the tree passed into death's embrace. Sometime later, another child came, also carrying a hoe. He dug a hole and planted a seed. This child was a descendant of the old man. The seed had fallen from the ancient tree. This is death and rebirth, said an aged voice suddenly. Suzumo felt his body gradually regaining mobility. Turning his head, he saw the old man who had previously died now standing beside him, smiling. Since the beginning of the world, the continuation of life has always been like this. Death becomes rebirth, rebirth becomes death, a cycle that never ends, the old man said. But for those who die, death is the end. No matter how much rebirth follows, it belongs to others. Their life has ended. Don't you agree? What are you trying to say? Suzumo asked. If you want to pass through the abyss of life and death, it's simple. Debate me. Win, and I'll show you the exit, the old man said as he sat cross-legged with a smile. If you lose, you'll go back. What do you want to debate? The meaning of life and death, the old man replied. Though the world continues through rebirth, for you personally, death is the complete end of your world. I want you to answer my confusion. If all things must die, why are they born at all? I don't really care about life or death. What I live is not life, nor death, but the journey in between. Isn't it good to live that part to the fullest? Besides, once you're born into this world, You're never truly alone. Family, love, friendship. Sometimes you live not just for yourself. Su Zimo shook his head and said, and look at this world's vast rivers and mountains, groups of beauties, power, wealth, the pleasures of life. There's so much to pursue. Yet you act like a fool, stuck on why life exists. If you don't understand life, just kill yourself here. I wouldn't mind. Hearing this, the old man burst out laughing. His voice was hearty, shaking the sky, sending ripples through the surrounding space. After a moment, he waved both hands, and a portal appeared before them. Laughing, he said, though you didn't directly answer my question, you're interesting. I'll let you pass. How should I address you, senior? Su Zimo asked. I'm the spirit of this abyss of life and death. The rules here are mine to make. Kid, I like your style. You may pass, said the old man. That's it. Su Zimo blinked, surprised by how easy it was. Your ancestor already gave advance notice. Just go on in. The abyss spirit waved his hand, smiling. Su Zimo shrugged and walked into the space portal. After he left, the old man muttered to himself, great rivers and mountains. Ha ha ha. This world really does have great rivers and mountains. How could I keep myself trapped here? Passing through the portal, Su Zimo arrived in a new, small world. Imperial Valley. This was the legendary residence of the true martial sacred grounds battle generals. Before him stretched a dense forest of towering trees, each hundreds of meters tall. Thick branches and wide trunks. Each tree had a trunk dozens of meters wide. As Su Zimo walked among them, he felt small and insignificant. Green sprites fluttered through the forest. They floated ahead of him as if leading the way. Su Zimo followed the sprites and walked deeper into the forest. Chapter 764, The Many Ancestors of True Martial Sacred Ground. Su Zimo followed the fluttering green sprites step by step into the deep forest. The air was filled with a refreshing scent. As he walked, he thought back to the question asked by the spirit of the abyss of life and death. In truth, heaven and earth are only complete at 10, but one is always missing. Thus the great Tao has flaws, and all things retain a sliver of hope. Though life and death are inevitable paths, the Tao also leaves room for survival. Once one's cultivation reaches a certain level, lifespan can be extended. Especially for those who become grand emperors, living millions of years is not out of the question. And according to legend, those who open all 12 meridians can achieve true immortality, eternal life. Whether it's true or not remains to be seen, but the possibility exists. Su Zimo continued following the sprites. The scenery was beautiful, with eternal spring-like conditions. It was very peaceful. He walked through dense cover of massive trees, feeling almost lost in the damp wilderness. Some leaves here were larger than his entire body. Eventually, the floating green sprites stopped in front of a massive ancient tree and vanished. Su Zimo curiously observed his surroundings. An elderly man in white robes with a kindly face walked over from the side. You've arrived, the old man said naturally. Greetings, ancestor. Su Zimo bowed slightly. He recognized the man. This was the Sky Shroud War God, one of Grand Emperor Jin Wu's old generals. Though they'd met several times, this was their first true conversation. No need to be so formal. Just call me Grandpa Hong, the Sky Shroud War God said with a smile. His real surname was Hong. Sky Shroud was just his title. It had been used so often that many forgot his original name. I'm not being formal, Su Zimo replied calmly. May I ask why Grandpa Hong has called for me? There are some things I want to give you and some things I want to tell you, the Sky Shroud War God said. What kind of things? Su Zimo asked with curiosity. The sect will explain the details of the War of Heavens will later. I won't go into that. What I want to talk about is the outer heavens, the Sky Shroud War God said. One thing I must remind you of, becoming a Grand Emperor is great, but if in the end you're not strong enough, don't be disheartened. Becoming an immortal is also a valid path. Do you understand what I mean? Grandpa Hong wants me to survive? Su Zimo smiled. Exactly. In every era, so many people join the fight for heaven's will, but only a handful survive. Most see the heaven's will as everything. If they can't attain it, they'd rather die trying. The Sky Shroud War God explained. The immortal path may not be as strong as the Tao path, but it's still a path forward. If you surpass the limits of immortality, you'll find a whole new world. I understand. Su Zimo nodded. The Sky Shroud War God took out a token. It was triangular, with a strange pattern carved on the front and the character Wu, Marshal, on the back. Whether you become a Grand Emperor or an immortal in the future, I hope you'll go to the outer heavens. There's a wider world there, the Sky Shroud War God said. This token was left behind by Grand Emperor Jin Wu. When he left for the outer heavens, he founded a force there and brought the true martial sacred ground with him. In every era since, when our disciples go to the outer heavens, they carry this token to find him. It gives them a place of refuge. Our disciples won't be bullied on the primordial heartlands, and neither will they in the outer heavens. Su Zimo accepted the token and smiled. Thank you, Grandpa Hong. Becoming a Grand Emperor is just a stop along the cultivation path. Don't get too attached. As long as you give it your all and have no regrets, that's enough. The Sky Shroud War God continued. I understand. Su Zimo nodded. Come with me, the Sky Shroud War God said, walking deeper into the forest. Su Zimo followed closely behind. Among all the holy sons in our sect's various eras, you're the one I'm most satisfied with, the Sky Shroud War God said as they walked. I've looked into your background. You rarely stay in the sect, and yet you've reached this level through your own hard work. You rarely rely on the sect for anything. Su Zimo smiled and shook his head. Since reaching the peak of the God Meridian realm, there were few things on the primordial heartlands that posed much of a threat to him. Even if he ran into danger, he could usually escape if needed. As they walked through the forest, Su Zimo noticed they were climbing upward. The path ahead became steeper, like a mountain trail. He could feel a mysterious force pressing down on this world, preventing him from flying. He had no choice but to walk forward step by step like a mortal. Eventually, they reached the top of the mountain. At the summit, besides the Sky Shroud War God, two others stood. One was a scholar-type man with a refined, elegant appearance. The other was a burly man polishing a long saber. Su Zimo paused. These two were the other two battle generals of the true martial sacred ground, the Heaven Saber War God and the Traveler. Greetings, esteemed ancestors. Su Zimo bowed slightly in respect. No matter what, these people were the true power behind the scenes of the sect. They had kept the sect safe for millions of years. They could have left for the outer heavens, but chose to stay for the sake of the sect. Kid, you're quite good. The Traveler laughed from the side. The Heaven Saber War God noticed the curved blade strapped to Su Zimo's back. His eyes lit up. Kid, wanna spar? He asked with a grin. The Sky Shroud War God coughed lightly. The Heaven Saber War God quickly smiled and said, Just joking. Just joking. It was clear that the Sky Shroud War God held considerable authority among them. May I ask why you brought me here? Su Zimo asked with curiosity. From this mountaintop, the view was excellent. Because of the elevation, he could see nearly everything below. The massive ancient trees seemed to pierce the sky. Looking out, the forest was thick and lush, as if every tree had become a spirit. Leaves of all shapes, oval, triangular, umbrella-like, covered the forest floor densely. We brought you here to give you something, the Sky Shroud War God said. What happens next depends on your own fortune. What is it? Su Zimo asked. The three ancestors exchanged glances. Suddenly, all three erupted with powerful auras. Three distinct colors of spiritual energy burst from their bodies and shot into the sky. The turbulent skies above swirled. The beams of spiritual energy merged together. The three men stood in a triangle. A triangular formation began to emerge on the ground. Chapter 765 Codex of Life and Death. The triangular formation opposed the shifting winds and clouds in the sky. It was like a reflection. Within the formation, a powerful aura spread out. Su Zimo didn't know what it was, but the sheer pressure it released was enough to shake him. It was clear the three ancestors were under immense strain, their auras growing more and more intense. The surrounding space began to crack and collapse under the force. "Open!" shouted the Sky Shroud War God. The three of them stretched out their arms and forcefully pulled open the formation that had emerged. The pressure and energy were overwhelming. The sky above shifted even more violently. Winds and clouds surged, and the entire firmament changed color. Fortunately, this was an independent small world, shielded by a barrier so outsiders couldn't see what was happening here. Once the formation was pried open with difficulty, the Sky Shroud War God shouted again, "Rise!" From within the formation, endless streams of black and white energy began to rise. The structure of this energy was unusual, similar to what Su Zimo had sensed earlier in the abyss of life and death. When the formation was fully open, accompanied by rumbling explosions and the vast black and white energy, a book slowly emerged. This book gave off an eerie feeling. Just one look at it made Su Zimo feel like decaying wood, as though he was about to die. He had never felt so close to death. Then, with another look, he felt reborn, filled with vitality, his body refreshed and healthy. "What is this?" Su Zimo asked with a frown. As the book appeared, the three old ancestors finally let out a breath and slowly retracted their energy. The book floated quietly in the air. It was black and white, black on the left, white on the right. The two pages were closed tightly, and its contents couldn't be seen. "Do you know why Grand Emperor Zhenwu built the sect here?" asked the Sky Shroud War God. "Is there a reason?" Su Zimo asked, puzzled. Normally, a sect would be built on land with good feng shui or due to personal reasons. As for the founding of the true martial sacred sect, this far western land had existed for millions of years. Neither Su Zimo nor anyone else had really thought about it. When Grand Emperor Zhenwu arrived here, he discovered the abyss of life and death, and along with it, this codex of life and death, the Sky Shroud War God explained. At the time, the book emitted a dense aura of life and death. The Grand Emperor, curious, decided to investigate. The Sky Shroud War God continued. But to everyone's surprise, even though he was already an emperor, Grand Emperor Zhenwu couldn't do anything to this book. "Is that even possible?" Su Zimo frowned. Although Grand Emperor Zhenwu wasn't the strongest of the Grand Emperors from the Imperial era, he was certainly among the top. The Primordial Heartlands wasn't a great world. Anything that could stump a Grand Emperor here could be counted on one hand. That's why he decided to build the sect here, to study the Codex of Life and Death. With his strength and status, the sect should have been founded on the Middle Continent, said the Sky Shroud War God. "Did he discover anything?" Su Zimo asked. "Very little. Without opening the book, it's nearly impossible to study it," the Sky Shroud War God said. Before he ascended, Grand Emperor Zhenwu left behind instructions. This Codex of Life and Death is to be left for someone with fate. If someone is destined for it, they may take it. If not, even a Grand Emperor won't succeed. "So you brought me here to try?" Su Zimo asked. "Not just you. Every holy son of the sect throughout history has tried, including Grand Emperor Sandao, Grand Empress Hongtian, and Grand Emperor Shenxing," the Sky Shroud War God said. "They all failed?" Su Zimo asked. Seeing the Sky Shroud War God nod, Su Zimo chuckled. Even setting aside the others, Empress Hongtian was incredibly gifted, truly one of the greatest female emperors. And she failed too? "This thing is interesting," Su Zimo said with a grin. "Give it a try. Whether it works or not, that's all there is to it," said the Heaven Saber War God. Su Zimo nodded slightly. He stepped forward slowly, channeling spirit force into his hands as he reached for the Codex of Life and Death. As soon as his hands touched the book, he felt streams of black and white energy flow into his palms. They spread through his arms. Life and death simultaneously surged within his body, splitting him in two. It was hard to describe the sensation, like fire and ice. Two extreme forces twined through him. Su Zimo opened his hands, trying to pry open the book. But it was like a single fused entity, tough and unyielding. No matter how much strength he used, it didn't budge. He couldn't use the power of his demonic body here, but deep down he realized, pure strength wouldn't open this thing. Still no good. The Heaven Saber War God sighed softly. It's fine. Don't be discouraged. The Sky Shroud War God consoled from the side. No one has ever succeeded before either. Su Zimo took a deep breath and released his grip. The aura of life and death gradually faded from his body. Can I try again? Su Zimo asked the Sky Shroud War God. You may. He nodded, though inwardly, he no longer held hope. Su Zimo closed his eyes slightly and shifted his consciousness into his true fate world. This wasn't visible from the outside. He summoned the primordial chaos bead from the depths of the void. Few things in existence could match its power. Even the solar illumination and lunar netherglow pearls couldn't. Then Su Zimo slowly opened his eyes. A powerful aura rose from his back. The blue planet formed by his true fate slowly emerged. As the god world within became more complete, the planet grew increasingly majestic. Its aura was vast and overwhelming. When the blue planet appeared, the surrounding void shattered from its power. What is that? The three ancestors stared in shock at his true fate. Su Zimo used the planet as cover and slowly channeled the power of the primordial chaos bead into himself. This world was shrouded by a formation, but as soon as the blue planet appeared, the formation was suppressed. Endless spirit force from the sky surged toward them. Incredible, muttered the Heaven Saber War God in awe. Su Zimo once again reached out and grabbed the Codex of Life and Death. But before he could exert force, the book turned into a streak of light and flew into his true fate world, hiding itself inside. Chapter 766 Martial Heaven Tournament. What is this? Everyone was confused by the scene, not understanding what had just happened. Even Su Zimo hesitated for a moment. After the Codex of Life and Death flew into his true fate world, it actually hid itself. You took the Codex of Life and Death? The Sky Shroud War God asked in shock. It seems to have entered my body and hidden itself. Su Zimo thought for a moment and replied. He couldn't reveal the truth about God World, so he could only say this. Can you try to summon it? The Heaven Saber War God asked hopefully from the side. Su Zimo shook his head and said, It's not under my control. I probably won't be able to use it for a while. He needed to study the Codex of Life and Death slowly in private. For now, he couldn't show them God World. After all, creating a world was too shocking. No one knows if this Codex of Life and Death is good or bad. Now that it has entered your body, there's nothing more we can do. Just keep your guard up, the Sky Shroud War God said. I've also spoken to the spirit of the abyss of life and death. If anything happens, feel free to come find me. Thank you, elders. Su Zimo bowed slightly. Go now. Work hard for the heaven's will, but don't die under it. The Sky Shroud War God reminded. Su Zimo nodded and turned to leave Imperial Valley. As he watched Su Zimo leave, the Sky Shroud War God looked at the other two and asked, What do you think? Not simple. I've seen the Holy Sons from these past few eras, but he's the only one I can't read, Xingzhe said from the side. All the previous Holy Sons who met us elders were either nervous or afraid. Only he remains calm and composed. He's a good seedling. The Heaven Saber War God nodded in agreement. I know all that. I'm asking about his true fate, the Sky Shroud War God said. What exactly was that thing? Even I felt uneasy. Why overthink it? Everyone has their own fate. Maybe the emperor of this era will come from our true martial sacred ground. Xingzhe laughed. Leaving Imperial Valley and the abyss of life and death, Su Zimo returned to the canyon. At this moment, the surrounding core disciples were still waiting for Su Zimo to emerge. Seeing that he hadn't come out for so long, many began to have bad assumptions. Did that guy actually make it in? Someone asked. As they were talking, Su Zimo slowly walked out of the abyss of life and death. Zimo, how was it? Lin Ruhu quickly stepped forward and asked. It was all right. Just chatted with the elders for a bit and then came out, Su Zimo said. You really met the elders? Xiang Qianheng asked in shock from the side. Su Zimo nodded slightly, glanced at the other disciples and sighed. Useless. Watching Su Zimo leave again, some disciples were quietly motivated. I'm going to try, said a disciple who hadn't gone in yet. After leaving the back mountain, Su Zimo planned to visit the scripture pavilion to research some things and parted ways with Lin Ruhu. He wanted to check into matters related to the Heavenly Tao Academy, the Mortal Dust Palace, and the Stone Race. These would be his focus moving forward. Upon arriving at the scripture pavilion, Su Zimo used his status as Holy Son to go straight to the 3rd floor. The truly secret information of the true martial sacred ground was kept there. As for the 4th floor, that was the legacy of the 4 Grand Emperors. He read through several books, including Chronicles of the Heavenly Tao Academy, 10 Forbidden Grounds, Mortal Dust Palace, and the Hidden Stone Race. He basically read everything relevant. This took him a full week. The intelligence work of the true martial sacred ground was indeed impressive. They had intel on many hidden factions and movements. Even though they resided in a corner of the far west of the eastern continent, they had a grasp on most of the changes across the continent. Their network spanned all 5 continents. After more than 7 days, Su Zimo left the scripture pavilion. He had basically learned everything he wanted to know. After returning to Yan'an Peak, Su Zimo resumed his cultivation. He planned to first cultivate the Gate of Eternity from the Heaven Unity 3 Gates God Scripture, then condense the power vortex within his soul. The closed-door session didn't last long before his father, Su Qingshan, sent someone to summon him. When he returned to Green Mountain, winter had already begun. Though it wasn't snowing heavily, light snowflakes drifted in the air. The trees on Green Mountain were still lush green. Snowflakes settled on the branches, blending vibrant green with pure white. Climbing the peak, Su Zimo saw 4 people had already gathered. They were Xiang Qianheng, Sword Monarch, Xia Zai, and Jiang Shir. When Su Zimo arrived, the others didn't say much. Only Jiang Shir's gaze flickered. 6th Grand Elder, Xiao Yuexian, had already been released from confinement. Though she had made many mistakes, she had also contributed much to the sect over the years. Under the Sacred Lord's suggestion, the Bailey Imperial clan had essentially formed an alliance with the true martial sacred ground. Bailey Xiao was not only the Bailey Imperial clan saintess, but had now returned the soaring immortal physique, officially becoming part of the true martial sacred ground. Su Zimo had anticipated this outcome. If Bailey Xiao were just an ordinary disciple, the sect wouldn't care. But setting everything else aside, just being the female Grand Emperor's personal disciple was enough for the sect not to make her an enemy. In the struggle for heaven's will, the more people, the better the chances. As for Bailey Xiao, Su Zimo would handle her himself. Father, Su Zimo greeted. Su Qingshan nodded, hands behind his back, and said, I've gathered you all to share some news. Is it about the Martial Heaven tournament? Xiang Qianheng seemed to know something and asked ahead. That's right. You may have heard rumors already. Once every 100 years, the Martial Heaven tournament will officially begin soon. In the past, each session was hosted in rotation by one of the 8 great imperial lineages of the Eastern continent. This year, it's the Bailey Imperial clan's turn, Su Qingshan explained. The Martial Heaven tournament is the largest competition in the Eastern continent. Not only will disciples from the 8 great imperial lineages participate, but countless top and second-tier factions from across the East will join too. Especially now that the era of Heaven's will is approaching, this tournament is even more significant. Vice Lord wants us to represent the sect? Asked Sword Monarch. Yes, you 5 have been chosen, Su Qingshan said. I will personally lead the group to the Bailey Imperial clan. You have 3 months to prepare. I'm telling you now so you can make proper arrangements. Can I not participate? Jiang Shir suddenly asked from the side. Chapter 767 Ambush. What's wrong? Su Qingshan turned his head and asked in confusion. With Heaven's will about to form, I want to focus more on cultivation. This Martial Heaven tournament has no meaning for me. Jiang Xier shook her head and replied. This time, the Martial Heaven tournament is hosted by the Bailey Imperial clan. I've heard that the top 10 finalists will receive a Dao Pill. The top 20 will be allowed to enter the small world left behind by the former Grand Emperor Chong Kong to cultivate. Are you sure you want to skip it? Su Qingshan asked. The Dao Pill was crucial in the cultivation of the God Meridian realm or in breaking into it, and the secret realm left behind by Grand Emperor Chong Kong could greatly enhance training results. As heavens will approached, countless cultivators needed to stabilize their realm at the peak of the God Meridian realm, an optimal state. But reaching the God Meridian was already the pinnacle of what humans could touch. It wasn't so easy to break through. Countless people spent their lives trying in vain. So at this point, if relying on self-cultivation was too slow, many turned to external help. Then I'll give it a try. Jiang Xier thought for a moment and eventually said. Su Qingshan smiled and nodded. Prepare yourselves. In 3 months, we'll head to the Bailey Imperial clan. Use this time to improve your strength. What awaits you are the holy sons of various lineages and some rogue geniuses, he said. Yes, Elder. Everyone nodded quickly. After the others had left, Su Zimo finally said, Father, I might need to leave for a while. Where to this time? Su Qingshan frowned. Some personal business. Just something I need to take care of. Su Zimo replied with a smile. What about the Martial Heaven tournament? The sect's counting on you to take the lead, Su Qingshan said. Just take them there. I'll meet you at the Bailey Imperial clan, Su Zimo said. Be careful, Su Qingshan reminded him. After leaving Qingshan Peak, Su Zimo decided to go to the Mortal Dust Palace. First, to search for the Nirvana Fire Pearl. Second, to see Lan Kuo again. The two had been apart for a long time. Ever since he destroyed the Lan clan, they hadn't seen each other. After saying goodbye to Lin Ruhu, Su Zimo also planned to speak with Little Gue. But when he arrived at Little Gue's residence, he couldn't find him for a long time. Logically, Little Gue should have returned to the sect by now. His injuries shouldn't have taken this long to heal. Fortunately, he found Yao Shengnan, who was still in the sect. Little Gue left? Su Zimo asked in surprise. Yes, Yao Shengnan nodded. He told me not to tell you. Why? Su Zimo asked in confusion. Gillen said his life had been too ordinary. You protected him in the first half of his life, and probably would in the second half as well, Yao Shengnan explained. He wants to go out on his own without relying on anyone. Maybe by the time the battle for heavens will comes, he'll be able to help you. That brat, Su Zimo chuckled. If he's chosen his path, I won't say anything. We'll all take care, he said. After saying goodbye to Yao Shengnan, Su Zimo left the true martial sacred ground alone. As one of the 10 forbidden grounds, the Mortal Dust Palace was no less dangerous than the other forbidden lands. Usually, there was only one kind of person who went there, someone who had seen through worldly affairs and wanted to escape from the world. Or perhaps someone once deeply evil, who had a sudden awakening. People who had experienced great change and become disillusioned, those were the kinds who ended up there. The origin of the Mortal Dust Palace was said to be a god from the legendary era. Whether true or not, no one could say anymore. It's said that during the legendary era, there was a world-weary goddess. She had grown tired of all the world's sins, greed, obsession, lust, and killing. So she created an independent realm, pure and clear, where only those who had cast off the 7 emotions and 6 desires, without attachment or relationships, could enter. If anyone else tried to enter, they would be punished by the divine power. Whether the world-weary goddess still existed was debatable, but one thing was certain. Even grand emperors didn't want to provoke the Mortal Dust Palace. Winter was cold. Breathing out turned to mist, and snow began to fall. The sky was gloomy as Su Zimo walked across the snow-covered land, brushing some flakes from his shoulders. Strictly speaking, the Mortal Dust Palace wasn't in the Middle Continent but beneath the endless sky sea. It was an underwater world. Su Zimo would need to reach the heart of the Eastern Continent before he could enter the Mortal Dust Palace. As he walked through the icy terrain, The day transitioned from noon to dusk. He was getting farther and farther from the true martial sacred ground. By evening, as the sky darkened, Suzumo slowly came to a stop. There were no cities around, and in this snowy wasteland, it felt truly desolate. Since you're here, come out. What's the point of hiding? Suzumo suddenly said, glancing around. He had sensed someone tailing him ever since he left the sect. Though the other party was highly skilled, he hadn't yet identified them. Now that they still hadn't made a move, Suzumo decided to speak up first. As expected of the holy son of the true martial sacred ground, sharp senses, came an eerie laugh from all around. Ripples appeared in the surrounding void as three figures in black stepped out. They wore black robes, their faces and heads covered by dark hoods. If you dared to come, why hide like cowards? Suzumo laughed. No choice. Your sect is too strong. We didn't want trouble. One of the black-robed men replied. Do we have personal grudges? Or were you sent by someone? Suzumo asked. You don't need to know that. Just take your questions to the underworld and ask the people you killed. Another answered. Then all three erupted with overwhelming power. Their auras were all at the peak of the God Meridian realm. 3 God Meridian cultivators. Quite the generous arrangement, Suzumo chuckled. The 3 said nothing more and unleashed their true fates. Each of them had a wolf as their true fate. Moonlight Wolf, Starlight Wolf, and Hellfire Wolf. The 3 wolves seemed to represent the moon, stars, and sun. They charged at Suzumo. Each wolf was hundreds of times larger than a human, bringing a gust of foul-smelling wind. Suzumo smiled and stepped into the air. The power of creation spread around him. With 2 punches and a kick, he knocked all 3 wolves flying. Moonlight Wave, Starlight Strike, Hellfire Claw. The 3 attackers roared in unison as vast spirit force engulfed the area, and the 3 true fate beasts grew significantly stronger. Suppress, Suzumo said calmly. Chapter 768, 3 Howl God. Faced with the oncoming attack of the 3 demonic wolves, the Hellfire Wolf resembled a blazing sun in the sky, its claws engulfed in raging flames. The Starlight Wolf moved with incredible speed, transforming into streaks of meteors as it darted around Suzumo, launching sneak attacks. As for the Moonlight Wolf, it opened its bloody mouth, letting out roaring howls that carried a soul-attacking force, attempting to confuse the mind. Surrounded by attacks from all sides, Suzumo chuckled. Pointless effort. With a single word, suppress. The force surrounding him surged like a massive tidal wave, crashing forth with overwhelming power. Wave after wave of pressure collapsed the surrounding void. The 3 giant wolves tried their best to resist, roaring furiously, but it was all in vain. With a sweep of Suzumo's hands, the 3 wolves were directly suppressed to the ground, limbs paralyzed, unable to move. Seeing this, the 3 black-robed men exchanged glances. The one on the left urged anxiously, Big brother, finish it quickly before something unexpected happens. The one in the middle nodded. All 3 raised their right hands simultaneously, forming a strange hand seal. Behind each of them, a shadow appeared, 3 wolf totem shadows. Each one resembled their respective true fates. Fusion, 3 Howl God. The 3 roared in unison. The 3 wolves on the ground transformed into streaks of flowing light and vanished. The streaks of light fused together. A deafening beast roar erupted from within the fusion. The glowing mass began to shift form, the 3 wolves roaring incessantly as they merged. Suzumo looked up slightly. A powerful, primal pressure radiated outward from the fusion. Then, a monstrous creature descended from the sky. This beast had 3 heads, all wolf heads. Its massive body was imposing, with the sun, moon, and star symbols etched into the foreheads of its 3 heads. Its aura was enormous. Just shaking its body caused the ground to quake and the mountains to tremble. The thick beastly pressure around it was nearly comparable to that of an immortal-level being. Its entire body was pure white. With a single roar, space around it shattered layer by layer. 3 Howl God. Suzimo muttered to himself. This seems to be some ancient demonic beast. As the holy son of the true martial sacred ground, you must be quite knowledgeable. The middle man chuckled. Why not try our true fate fusion technique? You're still ants. Suzimo shook his head. Power began to swirl throughout his body. Behind him, the giant of strength slowly manifested and stood tall. Endless strength surged around him. The giant was even more massive than the three-howl god. When it stood up, it gave the impression of carrying the heavens on its shoulders and treading the primordial world beneath its feet. Both his internal and soul-based power spirals spun violently. With each revolution, Suzimo could feel himself growing stronger. Let's give it a go, Suzimo said with a smile. Not just the spirals of strength, but the 18 strange meridians within him also stirred. The giant looked down upon the land and stepped toward the three-howl god. The three black-robed men snorted coldly and formed hand seals. All the surrounding spirit force rushed toward the three-howl god. With a furious roar, the three-howl god lunged at the giant. Its sharp fangs shimmered coldly as they bit into the giant's arm. But the giant felt no pain. It raised both hands and slammed the beast into the ground. With a loud boom, the earth shook. Cracks like spider webs spread in all directions. Gate of life and death, open, Suzimo growled. The Heaven Unity 3 gates around him opened. With the gate's activation, his aura grew even more intense. Spirit force within him transformed into flowing seas, rushing through his meridians and acupoints. Above the giant, the power of the Gate of Life and Death split open the void, transforming into a stream of light that shone upon the giant. The giant raised its head and let out a deafening roar. With its left hand it pinned down the three-howl god's head, while its right hand clenched into a fist and smashed downward. With a thunderous crash, the ground split into a bottomless pit. The three-howl god was smashed deep into the earth. But at that moment, its three heads all lifted, mouths open, releasing 3 beams of light, each a different attribute, blasting straight into the giant's face. Interesting, Suzimo chuckled. But with the Gate of Death now active, the giant was impervious to damage. The giant stretched out its arms and grabbed the three-howl god by the neck, violently slamming it into the ground again. This guy's too strong, the black-robed man on the left said grimly. Their spirit force surged, the 3 of them operating at full power, yet they were still being completely overwhelmed. I kind of regret taking this job, said the one on the right. No time for regrets, the middle one snapped. Focus on the fight, we can deal with everything else after. Is this really all you've got? Suzimo laughed on the side. He slowly drew his sword, Shadow Tyrant, and stepped toward the 3. He still has strength left? The middle one said in shock. They were being held in place by their fused true fate and couldn't participate directly in the fight. All their strength was tied up in maintaining the fusion. Fusion techniques had harsh requirements, though powerful, any lapse in concentration could cause failure. Wait, is that giant not his true fate? The one on the left suddenly shouted. Run! He didn't wait for the others. He turned and bolted into the distance. If the giant wasn't Suzimo's true fate, that meant Suzimo hadn't even gone all out yet. With that realization, the black-robed man had no will left to fight. He turned and fled, focused only on survival. Without his support, the three-howl god couldn't maintain its form. It split apart and reverted to 2 massive wolves. Third brother, what are you doing? The middle one roared in disbelief. Before the other 2 could react, the giant raised both fists and slammed them down. The 2 wolves were instantly crushed and annihilated. With their true fates destroyed, the 2 men coughed up blood, their faces pale and full of despair. Suzimo didn't waste words. Shadow Tyrant slashed through the air, blade lights raining down. Both their heads hit the ground simultaneously. The giant reached out, grabbed 1 corpse in each hand, and stuffed them into its mouth. Suzimo turned his gaze toward the distant horizon. Chapter 769 Monk Great Wisdom. The black-robed man was running for his life. The earlier battle had drained him greatly, and even though his body was at its limit, he didn't dare stop. Even now, he had no idea what kind of monster they had just faced. Although they had done some research beforehand and knew the Holy Son of the true martial sacred ground wouldn't be easy to deal with, the three of them were all at the peak of God Meridian, and they had trained their fusion technique together for many years. No matter how you looked at it, they should have had it in the bag. He just hadn't expected to lose so cleanly. Damn it, no wonder they offered such a high price. The black-robed man cursed to himself. Just then, his pupils contracted and he froze mid-run. Snow was falling, the wind bitterly cold, and the plains stretched out endlessly. Su Zimo stood casually up ahead, smiling as he watched the fleeing man approach. "No need to be in such a rush, we've got plenty of time," Su Zimo said with a light laugh. "Sir, we were blinded by greed. I beg you to let me go," the black-robed man pleaded quickly. "Take off your hat and speak to me properly," Su Zimo said calmly. The man hesitated for a moment, then threw off his hat. He looked to be around 40 or 50 years old, had a mustache, short hair, and a scar across his face. "Unfamiliar face," Su Zimo commented. "My brothers and I are just rogue cultivators. You likely haven't heard of us, we're not famous," the man replied quickly. "How could someone at peak God Meridian not be famous?" "I just didn't bother looking you up," Su Zimo said. "Speak honestly. Why did you come to kill me?" "I'll tell you. Can you let me go afterward?" the man asked cautiously. "You think you're in a position to bargain?" Su Zimo asked. "Don't you want revenge for the one who sent you after me?" "It was the blood nether sacred ground," the man finally said, rage and sorrow in his eyes. "Because you killed their holy son, you basically ruined their shot at seizing heaven's will in this era. So they wanted revenge. You lot sure have guts," Su Zimo said as he stepped closer. The black-robed man backed away, still keeping an eye on him. "We were blinded by money, but we weren't the masterminds. I've told you everything. Please let me go." "I'll deal with the blood nether sacred ground myself," Su Zimo said. "But since you were so close with your brothers, shouldn't you go keep them company?" With that, he raised Shadow Tyrant overhead. A blade aura surged out, cleaving the snowy land and splitting the white sky like a canyon. Seeing this, the black-robed man turned and bolted without looking back. But just as the blade aura descended, he ran directly into its path. Heaven and earth sank into silence. Snow flurried violently. The world was swallowed in a blinding white. When the snow finally settled again, all was quiet once more. Su Zimo's figure had already vanished, as if nothing had happened at all. "Waiter, bring me a pot of hot wine and a plate of bacon," Su Zimo called as he sat by the window. He brushed the snow from his clothes, enjoying the warmth of the inn before settling into his seat. After traveling across the wilderness, he had arrived in a city called Desolate City. This was already considered part of the Eastern Continent's core region, far from the extreme west. A waiter in gray brought out the hot wine and beef. "How far is it from here to the Endless Sky Sea?" Su Zimo asked. "Sir, once you exit the North Gate and pass through Heavenjade Mountain, you can take an airship directly to the Endless Sky Sea," the waiter replied with a smile. Su Zimo nodded slightly. After finishing his meal, night had fallen. He stayed the night in the city, and at dawn the next day he set off toward Heavenjade Mountain. The early morning was chillier still. The night had yet to fully fade when Su Zimo had just left the city gates. Suddenly, a voice called out from the mist, "Boundless Heavenly Lord." He looked toward the hazy darkness and saw a robed Taoist, sword at his waist, slowly walking toward him. Su Zimo didn't pay him much attention and was about to leave. But the Taoist chuckled lightly and said, "Please wait, benefactor. I've been waiting for you." "For me?" Su Zimo looked at the Taoist with surprise. The two of them had clearly never met, he was certain of it. "And who might you be?" "In your presence, I dare not claim any lofty title. My Taoist name is Plain-Minded." The Taoist smiled. "But you may call me Great Wisdom." "Great wisdom hides in plainness?" Su Zimo chuckled with interest. "That's an interesting name. My master gave it to me. I dare not disobey, the Taoist said with a smile. So what do you want from me? Su Zimo asked. Are you headed to the Mortal Dust Palace? Great Wisdom asked. How do you know that? Su Zimo frowned slightly. For him to be waiting here, and to know his destination was suspicious. Aside from the Qin clan, he hadn't told anyone. Su Zimo hated the feeling of being seen through. You'd better give me a perfect explanation, or you won't be leaving today, Su Zimo warned. Please don't be angry, benefactor. I'm here to help you, Great Wisdom said. Help me how? Su Zimo asked, frowning. Whatever your purpose is for going to the Mortal Dust Palace, I can help you with it, Great Wisdom said. You know what I'm going there for? Su Zimo asked. No. Great Wisdom shook his head. You're a strange monk. If you don't know, how can you help? Su Zimo asked. Just tell me your goal, and I'll give you an answer. Great Wisdom smiled. I'm looking for the Nirvana Fire Pearl, Su Zimo said. The Nirvana Fire Pearl, one of the 5 spirit orbs. Great Wisdom was clearly stunned. Then he smiled. You truly are extraordinary, benefactor. As he spoke, he pulled out a golden bone from his robe. The bone glowed with golden light. No one knew what creature it came from. It was inscribed with Taoist runes, profound and mysterious. The Mortal Dust Palace is vast. Do you even know where the Nirvana Fire Pearl is? Great Wisdom asked. If you're searching blindly, who knows how long it will take? Why not bring me along? What use would that be? Su Zimo asked. This bone is a relic from my grandmaster. It can guide us to the Nirvana Fire Pearl, Great Wisdom replied. Su Zimo's eyes locked onto the Tao bone. Even he couldn't see through it. It was like a fog, mysterious and obscure, impossible to discern. Chapter 770, Heaven Jade Mountain. Su Zimo chuckled and said, I suddenly thought of a solution. Why should I take you with me? I could just take the Tao bone by force. Hearing that, Monk Great Wisdom was stunned, then laughed. You truly are no ordinary person, but this Tao bone is sentient. It was left behind by my grandmaster. Even if you take it, you won't be able to use it. Su Zimo frowned slightly. Who exactly are you? No need for suspicion, benefactor. I'm only here to help you, Monk Great Wisdom replied with a smile. Why do you want to help me? Su Zimo continued. You are being guided, and I'm simply following that guidance, Great Wisdom replied. Su Zimo thought it over. If this person could truly help him find the Nirvana Fire Pearl, that would be useful. Otherwise, he might not even make it back before the Martial Heaven tournament began. And he only knew the pearl had been brought into the Mortal Dust Palace, not by whom. Still, Great Wisdom's sudden appearance was too strange, and Su Zimo stayed cautious. Fine, come with me, Su Zimo said. No matter what this guy's true intentions were, he'd deal with it as it came. Monk Great Wisdom smiled and nodded, following beside Su Zimo. Daylight gradually brightened the sky. The heavy snowfall in the air seemed to hint at clearing up. Su Zimo and Great Wisdom walked toward Heaven Jade Mountain together. Where are you from? Su Zimo asked. I'm a Taoist from the Universal Dharma sect. Not actually a monk, Great Wisdom explained. But if you prefer to call me monk, that's fine. Names are just labels. Beings come in all forms. Everything is acceptable. Universal Dharma sect? Su Zimo frowned slightly. Never heard of it. We're not well known. It's normal if you haven't heard of us, Great Wisdom laughed. But I've long admired the true martial sacred ground. Heh! Su Zimo chuckled but didn't probe further. Things he needed to know he'd find out eventually. Heaven Jade Mountain was located north of Desolate City, a snow-covered peak. Even in the scorching heat of summer, it remained blanketed in snow and bitter cold. Now that it was winter, snowflakes drifted through the air, thickly covering the mountain. The path up the mountain was lined with ice sculptures. These lifelike carvings depicted people, beasts, and even plants. They stood silently along the trail. Their purpose was unclear, and no one knew who had carved them. They were just ordinary sculptures. But the strange thing was, even when shattered, the sculptures would reform over time. The snow-covered mountain towered overhead, endless snow swirling around it. Su Zimo and Great Wisdom climbed into the snowy expanse. In this vast snowfall, the two figures looked small and insignificant. "Do you know the origins of Heaven Jade Mountain?" Great Wisdom asked with a smile. "No, and I don't care to," Su Zimo replied. "To chase the fleeing enemy with light cavalry. The snow falls thick on bow and blade," Great Wisdom murmured. Then he smiled. "Since childhood, I've traveled the rivers and mountains of primordial heartlands with my Grandmaster. I know quite a bit. If you ever have questions, feel free to ask." "Monk, can you divine the heavens?" Su Zimo suddenly asked. Great Wisdom paused, then scratched his head and said with a laugh, "Not me, but my Grandmaster can." As the two walked, they suddenly heard sounds of battle ahead. Looking up the mountain path, they saw a group of people fighting. Upon closer inspection, it was a group of people surrounding and attacking a young man. When Su Zimo and Great Wisdom approached, the attackers stopped and looked at them warily. "What are you doing here?" the purple-robed leader asked coolly. "The road's open to all. Why should we explain anything to you?" Su Zimo replied. "Heaven Jade Mountain is now sealed. Why are you still trying to enter?" the purple-robed man asked. "Sealed?" Su Zimo frowned. Great Wisdom glanced at the youth who was being hunted. The youth was cornered at the edge of the snowy path, looking quite battered. His yellow robe was torn in several places, and he looked dirty and worn out. But his eyes were bright and clear, full of spirit. "You all are ganging up on a young man, why?" Great Wisdom asked. "If you want to climb the mountain, fine. Just don't meddle," the purple-robed leader said coldly, warning them. "No relations, no reason for me to get involved," Su Zimo said calmly. "Why do you stand by and watch someone die?" Great Wisdom asked, glancing at Su Zimo. "Why should I save him?" Su Zimo shot back. "You are destined to become a celestial being. Shouldn't those who tread the path of the heavens act with compassion?" Great Wisdom replied. "Kindness builds karma. Karma brings returns. That's not my habit. If you want to save him, go ahead," Su Zimo said, waving his hand. "But only the right people should be saved," Great Wisdom said, turning to the purple-robed group. "You haven't answered my question. Why are you hunting this young man?" "Enough with the questions," the purple-robed leader said, clearly annoyed, and charged at Great Wisdom. "Boundless Tao," Great Wisdom said with a single hand gesture. In the next moment, a powerful aura burst from his body. It was vast and overwhelming, seemingly imbued with the essence of the Tao. As the aura erupted, Great Wisdom's robe flared and his expression grew imposing. Everyone nearby was immediately immobilized, unable to move a muscle. "Now, please answer my question," Great Wisdom said. The group of purple-robed men panicked, struggling against the pressure, but it was no use. The force felt like quicksand, holding them in place. "My mother is gravely ill. I came to gather medicine," the youth suddenly said weakly. "Heaven Jade Snow Lotus grows here. It can cure her. I don't know why they're trying to kill me." Great Wisdom turned to the purple-robed group. "Let us go, we won't kill him anymore," the leader said quickly. "You still haven't answered me." Great Wisdom shook his head. No one noticed the flash of a sword light, but the next moment, several of the purple-robed men's heads hit the ground. "He's a direct descendant of the Huang clan. We were ordered by the Huang clan's eldest young master to kill him," the leader cried out. Hearing that, Great Wisdom frowned. Chapter 771, Desolate Kingdom. In the next moment, the pressure around the purple-robed man suddenly lifted. He realized he could move again. "You can go," said Monk Great Wisdom. "You're not going to kill me?" The purple-robed man still felt like it was unreal. "You're really letting me go?" "I said you could go. I don't go back on my word," Great Wisdom said, waving his hand. The purple-robed man turned and ran down the snowy mountain without looking back. Great Wisdom turned his gaze toward a distant cliff face on the mountain. There, a pure white snow lotus was growing. He stretched out his right hand, which elongated several dozen meters, and plucked the snow lotus from the cliff. "Take this home and treat your mother," he said with a smile. "Thank you, Taoist master," the young man said with joy, carefully placing the snow lotus into the bamboo basket he carried on his back. He then asked, "Are you going up the mountain?" Great Wisdom shook his head slightly. "It's sealed right now. You can't reach the summit of Heavenjade Mountain," the youth said quickly. "I only risked coming up here for my mother's illness. I didn't dare go too deep." "Sealed? Who sealed the mountain?" Su Zimo asked. "It's not by anyone. Every year, Heavenjade Mountain becomes sealed for a period," the youth explained. "It's the mountain's own seal." Su Zimo glanced at Great Wisdom and said, "Didn't you say you knew everything?" "Well, I'm not sure about this," Great Wisdom replied with a sheepish laugh. "I only know that long ago, the desolate kingdom battled against the heavens here. This was their battlefield. If you two have nothing else, I'll take my leave," the youth said tentatively. "Go on," Great Wisdom nodded. As the boy walked away, Great Wisdom turned to Su Zimo. "Shall we keep going? What do you think?" Su Zimo asked, already continuing up the mountain. Great Wisdom quickly followed behind. "What do you mean by battle?" Su Zimo asked. "Today's desolate city was once the desolate kingdom, a powerful nation that could rival the imperial lineages," Great Wisdom explained. "But they violated some kind of taboo and were ultimately rejected by the heavens. Every single citizen perished in their rebellion against the heavenly Tao. After they died, the sky rained down endless snow, which eventually formed Heavenjade Mountain. There really are a lot of strange things in this world," Su Zimo muttered. "But what happens inside the sealed mountain? I don't really know," Great Wisdom admitted. The two of them climbed toward the summit. To reach the endless sky sea, they had to cross this mountain. It wasn't the only route, but it was the shortest. As they drew closer to the summit, Su Zimo noticed the sculptures becoming more numerous and more realistic, some so lifelike they seemed like actual people standing by the roadside. A few even radiated powerful auras. "Maybe I should divine something," Great Wisdom suddenly said halfway up. "I have a bad feeling." Su Zimo didn't object. He wasn't afraid, but getting some clarity wouldn't hurt. Great Wisdom took out 3 ancient bronze coins from his large robe sleeve. He held them in his palm, tied together with a red string. He tossed all 3 coins into the air. They spun above his head in a triangle formation, slowly forming a circular pattern. The red string seemed to divide into 8 sections, aligning with the 8 trigrams. Great Wisdom formed hand seals and raised his right hand. A wisp of pure energy flowed from his fingertip into the coins. In the next moment, snap, the red string broke, and all the coins fell to the ground. Great Wisdom stared at the fallen coins and snapped string in the snow, frowning. "For me, this is an ominous sign." "What about me?" Su Zimo asked. "How could I read your fate?" Great Wisdom chuckled and shook his head, collecting his coins and string. "Still going up?" he asked. "Don't you have a bad omen?" Su Zimo laughed. "If you go, I go," Great Wisdom replied. "Then let's go," Su Zimo said and led the way up. When they were less than 100 meters from the summit, a loud rumble shook the air. They looked up. Snow on the peak was trembling, as if the mountain itself were angry. "It's an avalanche," Great Wisdom said. Before he finished speaking, a thunderous boom exploded from above. A massive wall of snow came crashing down, too massive to describe with words. Everything in its path was obliterated. The thunderous crash of snow sounded like heavenly thunder falling from the sky. Given the size and speed, it was nearly impossible to dodge. But neither of them tried to. Su Zimo raised his right hand and formed a barrier of creation power in front of them. Great Wisdom, exuding quiet power, glared into the distance and roared. Unmoving as a mountain, he planted his feet deep into the earth, assuming a strange stance. The avalanche roared past, burying everything. Heavenjade Mountain fell into dead silence. The snow rolled down the mountain in waves, and 2 deep pits marked the place it had passed. Suzumo waved his hand, clearing the snow in front of him. He turned to see Great Wisdom still frozen in his bizarre posture. "It's over, let's go," Suzumo said. "Wait, I'm frozen stiff," Great Wisdom replied. Then flames ignited around his body. Crackling sounds filled the air as he thawed and began to move again. "It wasn't that serious," Suzumo remarked. "Something's wrong. Look around," Great Wisdom suddenly said. All around, the frozen sculptures began to move. The ice encasing them cracked, the sound of shattering echoing in every direction. As the ice broke away, the figures inside began to move. "Eternal through the ages, our desolate kingdom shall never fall," roared countless voices as one. Their cries pierced the clouds, shaking the heavens as they shouted against their unjust fate. "What's with these people?" Suzumo asked with interest. Great Wisdom's face turned grim. "The fallen warriors of the desolate kingdom. They've all come back to life." No, dead people can't come back," he muttered, then shook his head in denial even as the scene unfolded before them. Chapter 772, 17th Form. Godslayer. The 2 of them looked around. There were thousands of these ice sculptures, even more densely packed near the summit. More and more sculptures began to awaken. As they spotted Suzumo and Great Wisdom, a furious shout echoed out. "Those who offend the desolate kingdom, die!" Countless statues marched in unison, charging at the 2 of them. "What do we do?" Great Wisdom asked hurriedly. "Every man for himself," Suzumo chuckled and dashed toward the summit. Though these sculptures were powerful and moved with disciplined coordination, the gap in strength was far too great. Suzumo smashed through them one by one with his fists, charging straight up the mountain. Seeing this, Great Wisdom's eyes flickered, and he shouted, "Boundless heavenly lord!" His body expanded several dozen times in size, his robe enlarging with him. With each stride spanning tens of meters, he quickly followed behind Suzumo. As they got closer to the summit, the sculptures became stronger and stronger. When they finally reached the peak, they saw a throne standing atop it. Seated on the throne was a man dressed in imperial robes, with a dozen armored generals standing to his left and right. "Halt!" One of the generals stepped forward, spear in hand, and shouted, "In the presence of our king, kneel." "Trash," Suzumo said lightly. He drew his blade, Shadow Tyrant. A single slash of its sharp aura cut the general clean in half. "How dare you!" the man on the throne growled. The sky instantly shifted. A golden dragon coiled above his head. This dragon seemed real, not an illusion. The dozen generals charged at Suzumo. "Great Wisdom, block them," Suzumo called. Great Wisdom, catching up, didn't hesitate. His massive form stepped forward, blocking all the generals. Suzumo walked step by step toward the man on the throne. "How about a duel between us?" he said with a smile. The man in imperial robes slowly stood. With a wave of his hand, the golden dragon roared and lunged at Suzumo. Suzumo clenched his right fist and punched the dragon head-on. With a deafening boom, the golden dragon shrieked as the surrounding space shattered. It was blasted away by that single punch. The man's eyes flickered. He rose into the air, radiating divine majesty. He was like a monarch reigning over all, or perhaps he truly was a king. A dominating aura of supreme confidence spread from his body. "A ruler is one of dominance," he snorted, slamming his palm down towards Suzumo. "The desolate kingdom is already gone. What king are you still pretending to be?" Suzumo shook his head and laughed. From his blade, he unleashed the 16th form of Tao-seeking, Heaven Burial. A wave of black mist and blade light surged forth, striking toward the man. A massive explosion followed, like a mushroom cloud rising in midair. The entire sky was swallowed by darkness. Suzumo looked up. The man was still surrounded by a golden aura, seemingly untouched. "That's the power of people's wishes. It shields him from all attacks," Great Wisdom shouted from below. There's no such thing as absolute protection against overwhelming power, Suzumo replied coldly. He activated the 18 mystic meridians in his body, and the war god's 8 transformation appeared behind him. His entire body gathered spirit force from the world. 17th form of Tao-seeking, Godslayer, Suzumo growled. Shadow Tyrant trembled in his hand. This move condensed all of Suzumo's power into a single point, then released it with 100-fold strength. It was one of the ultimate forms of the 19 forms of Tao-seeking. Suzumo slowly raised Shadow Tyrant, endless blade intent coalescing around him. The aura was like his limbs and breath, changing madly with each of his movements. He stepped back with his right foot and raised his right arm, the blade gleaming coldly. Endless blade energy gathered at the tip. With a low shout, Suzumo swung Shadow Tyrant. The air exploded with a thunderous roar. The residual force alone triggered another avalanche on Heaven Jade Mountain. Snow poured down the slopes. The blade light split the sky itself, carving a chasm through the heavens. The man in imperial robes watched as the blade aura expanded before his eyes, already enveloping him. The golden wish power around him transformed, first into a roaring tiger, then into a descending dragon. But when the blade light reached him, it only resisted for a moment before piercing his entire body. He was annihilated in the wave of blade energy. "Your Grace!" The surrounding generals howled in despair. The moment the man died, the generals and tens of thousands of soldiers below chose not to live either. All committed suicide atop Heaven Jade Mountain. Their bodies were buried beneath the snow. That single slash from Suzumo had nearly split the mountain in two, creating a massive chasm. Suzumo looked up. Thick snow began to fall from the sky. The snowflakes seemed to sing a sorrowful requiem, covering everything. In moments, the entire mountain was blanketed again. These snowflakes carried a mysterious power. With their descent, Heaven Jade Mountain began to slowly recover. The chasm began to close. New ice sculptures appeared. They were sculpted in the image of those who had just died. "This is..." Great Wisdom looked on in awe. Taking a deep breath, he said, "Heaven Jade Mountain is no ordinary place." "I can see that," Suzumo said. "I don't know what kind of power is behind this, but these people can't truly be killed," Great Wisdom said. "It's the willpower of the desolate kingdom's dead," Suzumo said after a moment of thought. "Each year at a certain time they revive. But that's all, they can't leave Heaven Jade Mountain. Once the time passes, they turn back into sculptures. Then let's leave quickly. Fighting them is pointless," Great Wisdom said. Suzumo nodded. The two of them crossed the summit and began sprinting down the other side. From the mountaintop they had a clear view of the landscape. In the distance, the endless sky sea came into blurry view. Chapter 773, The Woman from Mortal Dust Palace. "Tell me, why did the heavenly Tao destroy the desolate kingdom back then?" Suzumo asked curiously as they walked down the mountain. "How would I know that? But the heavenly Tao must have had its reasons," the wise monk replied. "The heavenly Tao doesn't act lightly. It's like a ruler, maintaining the basic balance of this world. Unless something breaks that balance, it won't intervene." "You sure know a lot," Suzumo said with a smile. "Because our sect studies divination and often deals with the will of heaven. Naturally we know a bit more," the monk explained. "Have you ever defied heaven?" Suzumo asked with a grin. "What does it mean to defy heaven?" The monk laughed loudly. "Only those legendary figures might have the chance to provoke the heavenly Tao. Talking about defying heaven, for someone like me, a mere ant, the heavenly Tao probably wouldn't even glance at me. There's no such thing as defying heaven. At most, it's just being unwilling to accept an ordinary fate, trying to change my own destiny." Suzumo glanced at the monk. This guy really had some insight. The two walked down Heaven Jade Mountain and arrived at a river. This river was one of the many branches of the Endless Sky Sea. Following it upstream would lead them to the sea area of the Endless Sky Sea. Usually, there were boats here specifically for ferrying people to the sea. But because the mountain had been sealed off, the river now looked rather desolate and deserted. There's a small village nearby. Let's go take a look. Maybe there are boats? The monk suggested, glancing into the distance. The outline of a small village could be vaguely seen far away, and it looked like someone was cooking, with smoke curling into the sky. Suzimo nodded, not objecting. The two could have flown through the air, but since it was still some distance to the endless sky sea, traveling by boat would be much more comfortable. The village wasn't far away. It was a decently sized place. When Suzimo and the monk arrived, the stone tablet at the entrance bore the words, "Small Village." The village seemed newly built. The stone tablet still looked fresh. On both sides were a few cape trees covered in silver-white frost, quite beautiful. Suzimo entered the village and greeted a villager, asking about boats. There are boats in the village, but they're all managed by the village chief. You can talk to him, the villager replied. Following the directions, Suzimo and the monk walked along a stone path to the far end. There was a small hut made of stone blocks. An elderly man was sitting on a stone stool in front of the house, seemingly cleaning some seafood. Outsiders. The old man stood up slightly and was the first to speak when he saw them. Village chief, we want to go to the endless sky sea and would like to borrow a boat from the village, the monk said. Isn't Heaven Jade Mountain sealed? How did you get here? The old man asked suspiciously. We got lost in the mountain and somehow ended up here, the monk explained casually. I can send someone to take you by boat, but do you have spirit crystals? The old man asked. Taoists usually don't care for worldly money, the monk said to Suzimo. Suzimo smiled, casually took out a few dozen spirit crystals from his storage ring, and handed them over. The old man glanced curiously at Suzimo's storage ring, then smiled and said, Wait here a moment. I'll go make arrangements. He hurried into the village. Watching the old man walk away, the monk said quietly, Don't you think something's off? What's off? Suzimo asked with a smile. When we walked through the village earlier, I felt like countless eyes were watching us from both sides. Didn't you feel it? The monk asked. What's the point in overthinking? As long as it doesn't stop us from reaching the sea, Suzimo replied. As they spoke, a flurry of footsteps came from within the village. Soon, the old man returned with a group of men running behind him. Dust-covered, these were all burly men carrying weapons like chain sabers. Each wore a red headband with a skull emblem on it. Don't tell me we've stumbled into a bandit's den, the monk said helplessly. That young one looks rich, the old man told the group behind him. As they got closer, one of the men stepped forward and said, Hand over everything valuable, and I'll let you die with a whole corpse. Boring, Suzimo replied with some annoyance. No one saw the saber drawn, but a wave of blade intent swept out. Dozens of heads fell to the ground. Only the old man stood frozen in place. Where's the boat? Suzimo asked calmly. South side of the village. The old man stammered, eyes empty. Who are you people? The monk asked from the side. We're pirates from around here, the old man quickly answered. Despicable? The monk muttered, then crushed the old man's head with a palm strike. They were about to head to the south side of the village to look for the boats. But halfway there, Suzimo looked at a nearby house on the street and frowned slightly. Someone's hiding, he said. When they kicked open the door, they saw a woman tied up inside. Her clothes were partly torn, and she was sobbing. Seeing Suzimo and the monk enter, she became even more terrified. Who are you? The monk removed the cloth from her mouth and asked. Aren't you with those men? The woman asked cautiously. We're just passing through this village, the monk replied. Please save me. I was kidnapped by them, the woman begged. Amitabha. The monk recited a Buddhist chant and untied her. Where are you from? Suzimo asked. I came here with my parents. The woman hesitated and replied. But they killed my parents and abducted me. When a person speaks, the truth is written on their face. You can't fool me, the monk said, shaking his head. Don't trust us. The woman hesitated, then finally said, I ran away from the mortal dust palace. Hearing this, the monk frowned slightly. How could someone leave the mortal dust palace? Those who enter the mortal dust palace are supposed to give up all worldly desires and detach from everything. Once you enter, you can never leave. That's what makes the mortal dust palace so feared. Most people avoid it at all costs. Chapter 774, Entering Mortal Dust Palace. How did you escape from the mortal dust palace? The monk Great Wisdom asked in confusion. My mother sent me out, the woman replied. She told me to stay away and live on my own. But shortly after I left the mortal dust palace, I was captured by those people. Do you still know the way back to the mortal dust palace? Su Zimo asked. Yes, the woman nodded weakly. Then come with us, the monk said. After all, we saved you. Think of it as repaying the favor. Why are you going to the mortal dust palace? My mother told me never to return, the woman asked. You just need to show us the way. We don't need to go inside, Su Zimo replied. All right then. The woman thought for a moment and then nodded. My name is Guyu, she said. After exchanging names, the three of them headed south of the village. On the southern side of the village near the river, there were several large ships docked. But since it was just the three of them, Su Zimo chose a small flat boat. The three sat in the boat and used their spirit force to propel it toward the distant endless sky sea. The sea was usually murky, but this river branch was quite clear. The water sparkled, and because of the snow and ice, a thin layer of ice covered the surface. As the boat glided forward, the ice cracked and slowly melted into the water. Can you tell us about the mortal dust palace? Su Zimo asked. I don't know much. Guyu shook her head. Though I grew up in the mortal dust palace, I lived alone since childhood, sealed off and unable to leave. I see. Su Zimo nodded slightly. I can only take you there. My mother always said it was dangerous inside and never let me wander, Guyu said. Monk, how much do you know about the mortal dust palace? Su Zimo asked Great Wisdom. There are dust envoys in the mortal dust palace who are in charge there. That's something my grandmaster mentioned, the monk replied. I don't know anything else. I've never been there myself. As the three continued their conversation, more than 3 days passed. Thanks to Guyu's guidance, they avoided many wrong turns and finally arrived at the endless sky sea. As one of the 10 forbidden grounds, the mortal dust palace covered a vast area, almost half of the endless sky sea. No matter which continent you started from, you could enter the endless sky sea. Standing before the vast sea, the cold wind blew across the surface, turning everything white. Let's dive, Guyu said. The mortal dust palace was located in another world beneath the sea, so the three of them jumped straight from the boat into the water. The winter sea was piercingly cold, enough to make anyone shiver. They swam downward along the water. To enter the mortal dust palace, a formation was needed. It wasn't particularly rare and was widely known on the continent. But no one willingly used it because once you entered, you could never leave. As the three reached the seafloor of the endless sky sea, the pressure was overwhelming. Anyone with a weak cultivation might have their blood vessels burst and die instantly. Look for dust stones, Guyu said. The three nodded and began searching the seafloor for dust stones. The formation to enter the mortal dust palace required these specific stones. The seafloor of the endless sky sea was filled with dust stones, left behind for those seeking to enter. After a while of searching, the three gathered several hundred stones. Spirit force surged around Su Zimo. With a wave of his hands, all the dust stones began to circle around him. Su Zimo had seen the formation for the mortal dust palace in the True Martial Sacred Grounds library, so it wasn't too difficult. He formed hand seals with his right hand, each seal embedding a dust stone into the void. Once all the stones disappeared into the void, Su Zimo summoned them with a gesture. A brilliant light burst from around him. The dust stones connected and formed a complete formation. Are you going in? Su Zimo asked Guyu. Even though my mother told me not to return, I still want to see them. Guyu hesitated but eventually replied. Then let's go together. Suzimo said and stepped into the formation. The other two followed closely behind. As the world around them spun, Suzimo felt his body being sucked into something. He couldn't resist at all. After passing through layer upon layer of spatial barriers, the space around him eventually calmed. Suzimo found himself inside a city. Around him were others just like him, one by one emerging from the teleportation array. There were burly men, lifeless-eyed women, and swordsmen with long blades hanging from their sleeves. Among the crowd, Suzimo spotted Great Wisdom and Guyu. He waved at them and they quickly walked over. So many people come to the Mortal Dust Palace. Have they all truly renounced the mortal world? The monk said in surprise. Who knows? Suzimo smiled. He looked around. The city wasn't very large. After fewer than 100 people came through the formation, the flow slowed. Then, two men in bright red robes and wearing masks stepped in front of the crowd. We are Dust Envoys, here to guide newcomers to the Mortal Dust Palace. The one on the left announced. Follow us. The Mortal Dust Palace has no strict rules. But there are some things you must understand. The three followed the crowd and the two Dust Envoys to a large open plaza. Find a place to sit, the envoys said as they took seats at the front and looked at the crowd. Once everyone settled down, the Dust Envoy began to speak. Suzimo listened for a while. The message was clear, no evil acts were allowed here. Within the Mortal Dust Palace, greed, obsession, lust, and malice were forbidden. People here lived self-sufficient and independent lives. When the Dust Envoy finished, he waved his hand and said, You're free to go now. Just remember, do not violate what I just said. The world-weary goddess is watching you. After the envoys left, the monk muttered, Living like this, what's the difference from being a living corpse? You don't understand. Some people prefer this way of life, otherwise, why come to the Mortal Dust Palace at all? Suzimo said with a smile. I'm a bit hungry, Guyu said softly, touching her stomach with slight embarrassment. Let's find an inn, Suzimo suggested. There are no inns here. Since there's no currency exchange, everyone lives on their own. Guyu reminded him. Chapter 775 Battle at the Temple. Then how do people here get food? The monk Great Wisdom asked instinctively. They're all self-sufficient, they grow their own, Guyu replied. Let's go take a look inside the city. Maybe we can get a free meal. The three headed toward the city center. Along the way, Suzimo learned quite a bit. Since there was no monetary trade here, people did things purely based on their interests. Everyone was engaged in what they loved doing. When Suzimo arrived at the most bustling area of the city, he saw many people had set up stalls. Each stall displayed different kinds of items. Of course, these things weren't for sale. They were given freely to passers-by, who would then critique the craftsmanship. There's food over there. Guyu spotted a food stall and rushed over. The stall owner was an elderly man. When he saw them coming, he slowly stood up. Do you have food? Guyu asked quickly. The old man smiled and nodded, pulling out a box of fried rice from a container and handing it to Guyu. Watching her devour it hungrily, he asked with a smile, What's your verdict? Tasty. Guyu mumbled through her mouthfuls without even looking up. It was obvious she was starving. Little one, that answer doesn't satisfy me. The old man chuckled. I give out food for free because I want you to point out its flaws. Forget it, but next time I might not give you any. Guyu smiled sheepishly and said, But I really can't find any flaws. This is honestly the best food I've ever had. If you like it, then the value of this bowl of rice is fulfilled. The old man nodded. I've loved cooking since I was little. Seeing people praise my food fills me with joy. My greatest dream is to become the best chef in the world. Anyone who tastes my food will remember it for the rest of their life. Suzimo smiled as he looked around. He suddenly realized this place wasn't as bad as he had imagined. Everyone was doing what they loved. This land was eternally peaceful. No fights, no arguments. Aside from natural death, there was no death at all. It's time we got back to business, Suzimo said. He looked at Guyu and asked, Are you going to find your mother on your own? Or are you staying with us? I don't dare go alone to where my mother is. Can I stay with you for now? Guyu replied. Stay if you want, but I won't guarantee your safety, Suzumo said. Then he looked at the monk and said, Let's find the Nirvana Fire Pearl. After leaving the city, the three arrived in the wilderness. The monk Great Wisdom took out what he called his ancestral Dao bone. Protect me, he said. He placed the Dao bone in front of him and bit his fingertip, dripping fresh blood onto it. In that moment, a shocking aura burst from the Dao bone. Diagrams of the 5 elements and the yin-yang symbol began to form within it. In response to the changes of heaven, engrave the Dao on the bone. Great Wisdom chanted softly. He formed ancient seals with his hands. The Dao bone evolved into all things extremely complex. His changes were even more profound than Suzumo's heaven derivation astrolabe. After a long while, a mysterious flame ignited on the Dao bone. Great Wisdom suddenly opened his eyes, his forehead covered in sweat. He took a deep breath. Found it, Great Wisdom said. You okay? Suzumo asked. I'm fine. It's just a pity we used our ancestors' Dao bone. It's a treasure that only appears once in 10,000 years. Great Wisdom lamented. Where's the Nirvana Fire Pearl? Suzumo asked. I vaguely saw an image just now, the Goddess Palace, Great Wisdom replied. The Goddess Palace? Guyu cried out in surprise. My mother is in that palace. You know where it is? Suzumo asked. Everyone here knows. The Goddess Palace is the highest place in the Mortal Dust Palace, where the dust envoys issue their commands, Guyu replied. You're not really planning to go there, are you? If the monk's vision is correct, then yes, Suzumo said. But the palace is only open on certain days. It's not open to the public, Guyu said. They say it's where the world-weary goddess lives. The legendary era and the primordial era are long over. Even the imperial era has lasted millions of years. No matter how strong the goddess is, she couldn't have lived that long, Great Wisdom said, unconvinced. After all, the world-weary goddess was rumored to be a deity from the legendary era, far too long ago. But no one here has ever dared to challenge the authority of the Goddess Palace, Guyu said worriedly. How far is it from here? Suzumo asked. There's a temple of the goddess in every area. I heard they connect directly to the palace, Guyu replied. Then let's find the nearest temple, Suzumo said. They asked around at the city gate and learned that there was a goddess temple just 3 kilometers away. The dust envoys from the nearby cities usually lived there. The 3 headed north, and after about half an hour, they saw the legendary temple. It was grand and majestic. Everything was blue and white, and the walls were lined with small statues. At the moment, several dust envoys were entering and exiting through the gate. When the 3 tried to enter, they were stopped by the dust envoys. It's not the worship period right now. You're not allowed to enter, one envoy explained calmly. We're not here to worship. We want to go to the Goddess Palace, Great Wisdom said. The Goddess Palace doesn't entertain outsiders. The envoy waved them off. You should leave now. What if we insist on going? Suzumo asked. I already said no visitors, the envoy replied coldly. Suzumo glanced at Great Wisdom. The monk raised his right hand and grabbed directly at the envoy. The envoy was startled and stepped back, trying to flee. But the monk struck first, suppressing the envoy under his palm. Someone's attacking the temple, the envoy shouted, his body releasing a unique aura. Moments later, the sound of bells echoed through the air. A powerful force rose from within the temple, the ringing continuing and reverberating across the sky. Great, more trouble, Suzumo said helplessly. It's unavoidable. We need the Nirvana Fire Pearl. No one's going to give it up willingly, Great Wisdom said. The next moment, dozens of figures appeared in midair, flying out from within the temple. They were all wearing the red robes of dust envoys, each radiating a formidable aura. Chapter 776, Divine Envoy. Why have you trespassed into the temple? the leader asked calmly. Their auras were overwhelming, each one like an ancient god, looking down on Su Zimo and the others with disdain. You should be aware of the consequences. We just want to go to the goddess palace. We're only borrowing the way. I don't want to resort to violence, Su Zimo said. The goddess palace is the supreme holy land. It's not a place just anyone can go, the leading man scolded. Since you've come to the mortal dust palace, you must follow our rules. In that case, there's nothing more to say. We'll force our way through, Su Zimo said, waving his hand. Great Wisdom's body grew larger again, towering over 100 meters high. Stay behind and don't get hurt, Su Zimo said to Guyu. Seeing this, the group of red-robed dust envoys snorted coldly. With a wave of their hands, an infinite power began to gather in the heavens and earth. They seemed like the rulers of this world. Immense force condensed around them, pressing down directly on the monk. Great Wisdom's massive body withstood the force, but his expression quickly changed under the pressure. How are they this strong? He turned and shouted at Su Zimo. Come help me. I might not be able to hold them off. I believe in you, Su Zimo smiled. He didn't step in to help. The monk's background was mysterious, and Su Zimo wanted to see what he was truly capable of. Great Wisdom's expression changed slightly. He looked at Su Zimo and sighed. You still don't trust me. He raised his right hand, holding off the immense pressure, then drew a circle in the air with his left hand. Within that circle, a white light flickered. Heavenly change, he chanted. The light in his hand shot up into the sky, illuminating half the world. However, when the light reached the heavens, it was swallowed whole. Great Wisdom froze. Then his expression shifted drastically. He muttered, Why has the heavenly Tao changed? Don't waste your strength. This world was created by the world-weary goddess. The Tao is cut off here. We dust envoys hold the authority. One red-robed envoy said coldly. In this land, we can draw upon the power of the world. Here we are the only gods. Help me out. Great Wisdom shouted to Su Zimo. My divination methods are useless here. The Tao is cut off. You weren't divining earlier, were you? Su Zimo asked. That was my ancestor's Tao bone. I'm not strong enough, Great Wisdom explained anxiously. Seeing that Great Wisdom really had no way to resist, Su Zimo nodded. He drew his blade, Shadow Tyrant, and unleashed endless blade energy. With a thunderous boom, the pressure was slashed apart. The dozen or so dust envoys looked at Su Zimo in shock and said, In that case, we'll suppress you both. Their auras grew stronger. The auras of the dozen merged together, and their power seemed to fuse with the world itself. Great Wisdom stood beside Su Zimo, saying seriously, They're drawing from the power of the world. Be careful. No need. Big ants, small ants, all the same, Su Zimo said, waving his hand. Shadow Tyrant rose slowly behind him, and endless blade intent began to form. One strike, Su Zimo said calmly. More and more blade intent gathered on the blade, distorting and shattering the space around it. Then Su Zimo slashed down. In that moment, the world lost its color. The roaring blade intent surged forth. The red-robed dust envoys in the sky watched the strike. The wind blew fiercely, sending their long hair flying. Suppress it, they all shouted. They pressed down with both hands, trying to counter the blade with the power of heaven and earth. With a loud explosion, the radiant blade light burst in front of them. The endless blade intent grew more violent, tearing through the suppression, exploding in the sky. The dozen dust envoys were all blasted away, landing in disarray around the temple. Stop! Everyone stop! A loud voice suddenly rang out. Su Zimo turned to see another red-robed dust envoy standing beside Guyu. A long sword was pressed against her neck. Make another move and I'll kill her, the envoy shouted. Go ahead. Kill one and show me, Su Zimo said with a smile. If you leave now, I'll let your companion go, the envoy offered. I don't respond well to threats, Su Zimo replied flatly. He walked toward the dust envoy step by step. Seeing this, Great Wisdom hesitated but said nothing in the end. The Dust Envoy's expression showed growing panic. The sword moved closer to Guyu's neck, almost touching her skin. "Don't come any closer or I'll really kill her," he shouted while slowly retreating with Guyu. Just then, a token fell out of Guyu's pocket. When the Dust Envoys saw it, their expressions changed slightly. One of them shouted, "Stop! Don't harm her." That envoy descended from the air and carefully picked up the token. He stared at it for a moment, then looked at Guyu and asked, "Where did you get this token?" "Someone gave it to me," Guyu replied with difficulty. "Let her go," the Dust Envoy ordered the one holding Guyu. "Honored one, you." The other envoy began, confused, but he still released Guyu. "Greetings, Divine Envoy." The first Dust Envoy bowed slightly, respectfully handing the token back to Guyu. Divine Envoy," Guyu asked in confusion. "Are you talking to me? Whoever holds this token is considered a Divine Envoy." The Dust Envoy nodded and said. Guyu still seemed confused and quickly ran behind Suzumo. "There's no need for Divine Envoy to be alarmed. We won't harm you," the Dust Envoy said. "Enough with the nonsense. We're going to the Goddess Palace. Can we or not?" Suzumo asked with a frown. "With a Divine Envoy accompanying you, of course." The Dust Envoy nodded, not angry in the slightest. "When would the Divine Envoy like to return to the palace?" "Right now." Guyu looked at Suzumo, then replied. "Then please follow me," the Dust Envoy said with a slight smile, gesturing for them to proceed. Chapter 777 Goddess Palace. Hearing the Dust Envoy's words, Suzumo didn't hesitate and followed him into the temple. The temple was quite spacious, with several large halls inside. Over a dozen Dust Envoys moved in and out, all busy with their tasks. "Where did you get that token?" The monk Great Wisdom looked curiously at Guyu as they walked. "My mother gave it to me. She said if I ever found myself in danger here, I should show the token," Guyu replied. "Your mother might be a Divine Envoy," Great Wisdom said. "She must have some connection to the Goddess Palace." "I don't know," Guyu said, her mood low. "I don't understand why she sent me out of the Mortal Dust Palace and didn't let me stay by her side." "The Mortal Dust Palace is a place one can enter but never leave," Suzumo said with a smile. "If your mother managed to send you out, she must not be ordinary." The group followed the Divine Envoy into a grand hall. The hall was simply decorated, with blue and white windows and walls. At the head of the hall stood a statue. The statue was dozens of meters tall, depicting a woman ascending to the heavens. She wore a flowing cloud-patterned gown, also in blue and white, with blue ribbons coiling around her. "This is the world-weary goddess, the founder of our Mortal Dust Palace," the Dust Envoy explained as he noticed their curious looks. Suzumo nodded slightly. The statue had no face, only a carved back, offering little detail. "How long does it take to get from your temple to the Goddess Palace?" Great Wisdom asked. "At the fastest, a day. Though we're connected by teleportation arrays, the distance is still quite far," the envoy explained. As he spoke, he pulled out a red token from his body. He placed it into a slot in front of the statue. The next moment, a blue and white light shone from the statue of the goddess. The light seemed to reflect outward and began rotating at one corner of the floor. "Hurry in," the Dust Envoy said. "The array only stays open for a limited time." Once Suzumo and the others stepped into the teleportation array, the light spun faster. The next moment, the light condensed into a glowing point and swallowed everything, vanishing into the void. Watching them disappear, the Dust Envoy finally let out a breath. "They're gone." A voice came from the door. An old man with a cane slowly walked in. "Elder Tsong, what brings you here?" The Dust Envoy greeted him quickly. "They forced their way in. How could I not show up?" The old man chuckled. "You gave in. They had a Divine Envoy's token," the Dust Envoy replied. "I suspect that's not the only reason," the old man smiled. The Dust Envoy was silent for a moment, then said, I couldn't beat him. Let's hope things remain calm. The old man shook his head slightly. The mortal dust palace may look peaceful now, but everything is stretched taut, ready to snap at any moment. During the teleportation, it took about half a day before Suzimo and the others reappeared outside. Much faster than expected. The three found themselves standing on solid ground, looking around. It seemed they had arrived inside the goddess palace. They stood in a vast plaza. Statues surrounded the area, and fountains morphed into various shapes. Two women in red robes stood guard before the teleportation array. "What business do you have at the goddess palace?" asked the envoy on the left, her voice cold. "We're here to find something," Great Wisdom replied with a smile. "What are you looking for?" she asked, confused. "The Nirvana Fire Pearl. Do you know where it is?" Suzimo asked. "The Nirvana Fire Pearl?" The envoy frowned. "Which temple are you from?" Guyu quietly took out her divine envoy token. At first, the two women paid it little attention. "What's this?" The envoy on the left frowned. Then her eyes suddenly widened. "This is what the palace master instructed us about." The two envoys gave Guyu a deep look and said, "Please come wait in the grand hall. If there's anything to discuss, you can speak with our palace master." Suzimo wasn't in a rush and nodded slightly. One of the two envoys took the token and left. The other led Suzimo and the others to a cold yet magnificent grand hall. The hall was built from translucent blue and white stone, like glass. At the top was a throne, appearing to be made of gemstone. It sparkled and shone brilliantly. The multicolored gems reflected all kinds of lights under the sun. Suzimo and the others were seated at a table in front of the throne to wait. "How do I get in touch with my mother?" Guyu asked hopefully. "Ask the palace master when she arrives," Suzimo said. "That token of yours is clearly special." As they spoke, a sound of distant horns suddenly rang out outside. "The palace master arrives," a cold voice called out. Accompanied by several red-robed envoys, a woman wearing a crown and holding a staff slowly entered. She was regal and elegant, dressed in a majestic white cloud-patterned gown. The dress was a one-piece robe, flowing and a bit loose. The hem stretched a meter long, carried by several envoys behind her. The robe was embroidered with wide sleeves and cloud motifs, adorned with pearls and gemstones, luxurious and graceful. As the woman stepped forward, Guyu's eyes widened. She opened her mouth to speak, but the palace master suddenly released a powerful aura. Guyu was so shocked she couldn't get a word out. "You may leave," the palace master waved to the envoys at her sides. The envoys bowed and quietly exited the hall. "What brings you to my goddess palace?" The palace master glanced at Guyu, then asked Suzimo and Great Wisdom. "We heard the Nirvana Fire Pearl is here," Suzimo replied. "So what if it is and what if it's not?" the palace master asked. "We came specifically for the Nirvana Fire Pearl." Great Wisdom stood up and smiled. "Why not do a good deed, palace master? This man Su here is fated with the pearl. Gift it to us and form a karmic bond." "I'm not very familiar with the Nirvana Fire Pearl," the palace master said. "Why don't you stay here at the goddess palace for now? Once I've looked into it, we can discuss again. How does that sound?" "I'll wait for 3 days," Suzimo said. "If this can be resolved peacefully, that would be best." The palace master nodded. Her calm demeanor and handling of the situation left Suzimo slightly puzzled. Chapter 778 Night Clash. Before coming here, Suzimo had already prepared for a tough battle. After all, there's no such thing as a free lunch in this world. Why would someone hand over such a treasure for nothing? In the end, only strength could speak. But the palace master of the goddess palace hadn't gotten angry and even showed signs of compromise. This surprised Suzimo. After exchanging a few words with the palace master, Suzimo and the others were led by several divine envoys to a place to rest. On the way, Suzimo looked at Guyu and asked, "You seemed like you wanted to say something earlier?" "No, it's nothing." Guyu quickly shook her head, her face pale as she replied, "If you don't want to say, I won't force you." Suzimo shrugged. The group was staying in a courtyard. There were 3 rooms inside, 1 for each person. Night gradually fell. The night at the goddess palace was incredibly beautiful. The sky was dotted with countless stars, giving off an unreal and dreamy beauty. Still, the stars shone brightly across the sky, with a full moon hanging above. Suzimo and the others returned to their rooms early to rest. He cultivated through the entire night in silence. The next morning, the 3 stepped out of their rooms, and the dust envoys had already prepared breakfast. After eating, they couldn't wander around the palace and could only rest within the courtyard. Suzimo had made good progress in cultivating the power of heaven-shattering God Scripture. In his divine soul, there were now over 1,000 power vortexes. He was pushing toward the gate of eternity of the Heaven Unity 3 Gates God Scripture. Occasionally, he would also work on opening the remaining strange meridians. As for Great Wisdom the monk, he seemed to be constantly divining. His divination was cut off in this small world, and he kept trying to connect with the heavenly Tao outside. Without the ability to divine, his strength was significantly weakened. Guyu appeared somewhat gloomy and distracted. Suzimo didn't pressure her to speak. A day passed quickly, and night fell. That night, while cultivating, Suzimo suddenly opened his eyes. He rushed toward Guyu's room next door, and Great Wisdom the monk seemed to have sensed something as well and followed him. When they arrived at Guyu's room, they saw a figure in black robes carrying her on his shoulder, preparing to leave. Seeing the 2 arrive so quickly, the black-robed man clearly froze for a moment. "Who are you?" Great Wisdom asked, frowning. The black-robed figure didn't respond and fled through the window in another direction. "Enough talk! Chase him!" Suzimo shouted. The 2 gave chase. The black-robed figure was clearly powerful and moved several hundred meters in the blink of an eye. Suzimo struck with a blade, his speed was even faster. The black-robed man barely dodged the attack. "Amitba!" Great Wisdom chanted. Endless spirit force surged to suppress the black-robed man. Just as it looked like he would be caught, a cold snort rang out from the sky. Like thunder, like a war drum, the snort exploded within Great Wisdom's soul. Great Wisdom groaned and staggered, nearly falling. In that moment, the black-robed figure seized the chance to flee. "You're not getting away!" Suzimo's figure pierced through the void. Countless afterimages flashed and blocked the black-robed man's path. His pupils shrank slightly, clearly shocked at Suzimo's speed. Suzimo slowly drew Dominator's shadow and said flatly, "Take off the mask. Leave her behind." Just then, a rumbling sound echoed from the sky. Spirit force surged around them, and the stars above seemed to churn. A massive hand formed from spirit force reached toward Suzimo. It blocked the space between him and the black-robed figure. "You're not enough," Suzimo snorted coldly. Shadow Tyrant slashed down with divine-slaying momentum. He stepped into the sky, his aura overwhelming. His blade surged like endless waves, one after another, clashed head-on with the massive hand. The blade energy was dazzling and unstoppable, tearing through the hand and seemingly splitting the sky. Seeing this, the black-robed man gave up all pretense. He threw Guyu at Suzimo and fled into the distance. Suzimo didn't chase. He quickly caught Guyu and examined her. She was only unconscious, not injured. He handed her to the arriving Great Wisdom. "Is she okay?" Great Wisdom asked. Suzimo shook his head slightly, his eyes fixed on the starry sky. The 2 carried Guyu back to the courtyard and woke her up from unconsciousness. Guyu shook her head lightly. She couldn't remember anything, only that she had fallen asleep. "What now?" Great Wisdom asked. "We go find the palace master of the goddess palace," Suzimo said. "I didn't want to cause a commotion, but if she won't play by the rules, then I'll go to war." Guyu hesitated for a moment. Then she said, "Can I ask you something?" "What?" Suzimo asked. "No matter what happens, please don't hurt the palace master," Guyu pleaded. "I'll see how I feel. If she hands over the Nirvana Fire Pearl, I won't hold a grudge," Suzimo said. As the three left the courtyard, two divine envoys immediately stopped them at the gate. By order of the palace master, you may not leave freely. Su Zimo waved his hand and suppressed them instantly, not bothering with words. After he left, the two envoys could finally move again. Their foreheads were drenched in cold sweat, and they swallowed hard in shock. The trio slowly walked to Imperial Heaven Tower. This was the palace master's residence. More than a dozen divine envoys who tried to stop them had already fallen. Only 7 or 8 remained guarding the front. Enough! All of you step back. A cold voice came from within. The palace master walked out slowly, frowning at Su Zimo. What's the meaning of this? Shouldn't I be asking you that? Su Zimo said. What was that black-robed man doing? Even in your palace, things happen without your knowledge? Since we're already here, let's lay everything on the table. Su Zimo slowly lowered Shadow Tyrant, the blade tip stabbing into the ground, cracks spreading from beneath his feet. Hand over the Nirvana Fire Pearl, and I'll let everything go. If I hear a single useless word, I'll slaughter this entire palace. Such arrogance. The surrounding envoys roared in anger. You brat, do you know where you are? A little power and you think you can do whatever you want. The palace master slowly lifted her head and gave a faint smile. Chapter 779, Journey to Heavenly Bond Cult. The palace master of the Goddess Palace let out a light laugh and said, I haven't even held you accountable for earlier matters. If you really think you can keep pushing your luck, go ahead and try. Su Zimo slowly picked up Shadow Tyrant, looked at the palace master and said, I know your mortal dust palace has existed in this world for a very long time, but in the lands of the primordial heartlands, there are few places I cannot wipe out. On Shadow Tyrant, blade intent slowly spread outward. The surrounding space shattered like tofu, easily broken into countless fragments. Just as the situation was about to erupt, a woman in a blue dress came rushing from afar. Everyone stop. The woman descended gracefully from mid-air. She said, The ancestor is aware of your situation and has her own solution. The ancestor would concern herself with this? The palace master frowned, then glanced at Guyu and seemed to understand. The palace master snorted and said, Since that's the case, let the ancestor handle it. After speaking, she left with a flick of her sleeve. Come with me. The woman in blue didn't mind, glanced at Su Zimo and the others and spoke softly. Su Zimo frowned slightly and followed her deeper into the goddess palace. This goddess palace sure is complicated, Great Wisdom said. My patience is running thin, Su Zimo said plainly. He looked at Guyu and asked, You must know something. Otherwise, they wouldn't have tried to abduct you out of nowhere. Guyu hesitated and finally said, I've never been here before, but the palace master looked exactly like my mother. Exactly the same? Su Zimo's frown deepened. But she definitely wasn't my mother. My mother wouldn't be that cold. Guyu quickly added, Seems like your identity has a story, Su Zimo said. The three followed the woman in blue through a quiet, long corridor. After passing through several secluded courtyards, they finally arrived at the back mountain of the goddess palace. It looked like a desolate mountain range, completely out of place with the grandeur of the palace. The ground was barren. A few withered trees stood scattered, their branches and leaves long dead. The mountains were bleak, and a few crows with gloomy eyes watched the people coming and going. What is this place? Guyu asked, a little frightened. The woman in blue looked at her and smiled. Don't be afraid. This is the back mountain. Soon you'll meet the ancestor of our mortal dust palace. She led them to the entrance of a cave. The entrance was sealed by a stone door, with 2 white crow statues standing on either side. White crows were indeed rare. Ancestor, the visitors have arrived. The woman in blue said respectfully to the cave, then stepped aside. Little girl, come forward so I can take a look at you. A raspy old woman's voice came from inside. Guyu looked at Su Zimo, then nervously stepped forward. She looks just like her, like a carbon copy from childhood. The old woman sighed emotionally. Then she composed herself and said flatly, I already know why you've come. Getting the Nirvana Fire Pearl isn't impossible. Just tell me the conditions, Suzimo said directly. Straightforward. Help me kill someone, the old woman said from the cave. Who? Suzimo asked, frowning. The leader of the Heavenly Bond cult, Gongsun Hongtian. What's that? Suzimo asked in confusion. Lanner will explain the details to you, the old woman answered. You just need to bring back Gongsun Hongtian's head in exchange for the Nirvana Fire Pearl. Let's go, said Lanner, the woman in blue smiling. The ancestor doesn't like to be disturbed. I'll answer any other questions. She turned and left the back mountain with the group. The crows shrieked sharply on either side, almost like they were sending them off. What's the Heavenly Bond cult? Suzimo asked. In recent tens of thousands of years, it's a rising power within our mortal dust palace. Founded by Gongsun Hongtian, and very powerful, Lanner explained. Isn't the goddess palace the ruler here? Why allow it? Suzimo asked. The world knew the mortal dust palace was a sacred land created by the world-weary goddess, and the goddess palace represented her, supreme in status. Because of the sealed nature of our mortal dust palace, those who enter can never leave. Information gets blocked, Lanner said with a bitter smile. To be precise, the Heavenly Bond cult has grown too powerful to ignore and too strong for us to deal with. Even the ancestor has no way to stop them. Your ancestor sure gets the best of both worlds. What a clever plan, Suzimo snorted. The Nirvana Fire Pearl is a supreme treasure, so the condition is fair, Lanner said with a smile. Fine, I agree, Suzimo nodded. Where is the Heavenly Bond cult? To the north of the Mortal Dust Palace. They've taken over nearly 1/3 of the area, Lanner replied. If you're going, I can use a teleportation formation to send you to the closest city. Then let's go. Staying here is boring anyway. Suzimo waved his hand. You may leave, but can this young lady stay behind? Lanner asked, looking at Guyu. Why? Guyu asked quickly. We're just worried you won't return, Lanner explained. Do you want to stay? Suzimo asked Guyu. No, I want to stay with you, Guyu answered quickly. Then she's not staying. Suzimo looked at Lanner and said, If I don't return, then I don't return. My decisions will never be swayed by anyone. Lanner hesitated but didn't push further. It was likely just a test. From the teleportation formation of the Goddess Palace, one could reach any city within the Mortal Dust Palace. However, ever since the Heavenly Bond cult emerged, the north had been cut off from the palace. The city they traveled to was called Martial Flame City, the closest one to the Heavenly Bond cult. Suzimo and the others didn't linger. Led by Lanner, they entered the teleportation array. Before leaving, Suzimo asked Lanner what kind of place the Heavenly Bond cult was. But she didn't answer. It seemed they harbored deep resentment toward that place. After Suzimo and his group departed from the teleportation array, Lanner turned to leave. Chapter 780 All my answers are in the books. Just as the woman in the blue dress turned around, she saw the palace master of the goddess palace standing nearby, watching her. Palace master. The woman in blue was momentarily stunned, then quickly reacted and smiled. The ancestor let them leave? The palace master asked. There are some matters to be dealt with. The woman in blue replied with a smile. That girl. The palace master hesitated. The ancestor has her own plans. Palace master need not worry. The woman in blue said with a smile. This matter will pause here. Though the ancestor didn't say it explicitly, it's clear she doesn't want you involved. The ancestor really is well informed. The palace master stretched lazily and smiled. They'll only be in the palace for a day or two. Even though the ancestor has handed authority over to you, there are still some things she wants to be aware of. The woman in blue replied with a smile. I don't care. This position was hers to give anyway. The palace master answered flatly. You're very loyal, Lanner. They stayed in the teleportation array for about 7 days. The three of them finally stepped onto solid ground and saw the sunlight. As a place bordering the heavenly bond cult, the people of Martial Flame City were all very martial-minded. Everyone practiced martial arts. It was the local trend. They were used to dealing with people from the heavenly bond cult, and many of the sect's members lived in the city under hidden identities. If other places followed the Goddess Palace's teachings strictly, free of greed and personal gain, then Martial Flame City was already a gray area, stained by both black and white, secretly engaging in all sorts of trades that defied the palace's commandments. Upon arriving in Martial Flame City, the three found it unusually bustling. The streets were full of people, far livelier than other cities. "What do we do now?" Guyu asked. "Maybe find a place to rest first," Great Wisdom suggested. "Regardless, we should figure out the basic situation with the heavenly bond cult. Charging in recklessly could cost us." "Good idea," Suzimo nodded. He led the two to the center of the city and stopped in front of an inn called Sun Moon Inn. As soon as they entered, a worker came up to greet them. "Are you here to eat or to stay?" the worker asked quickly. "Both," Suzimo replied. "You know the rules, right?" the worker asked with a smile. "What rules?" Suzimo asked. "Oh, nothing." The worker quickly shook his head and said, "Our boss is a kind man. Everything here is free. You can eat and stay as you please." "Then thank your boss for me," Suzimo said. "No need to thank him yet. There's an opportunity right now." The worker waved his hand and said, "Our boss is currently raising charity funds. He wants to build more inns like this to help more people. Would you be willing to donate?" "How much?" Suzimo asked. After circling around, he finally realized this was just a blatant hint. Because of the Goddess Palace's rules forbidding monetary transactions, the people of Martial Flame City came up with a workaround. Under the name of charity, they were actually charging for food and lodging. That way, the money changed hands without breaking any rules, and no one could criticize them. It was an open secret. Where there are people, there are schemes. "Not much, just 100 spirit crystals," the worker said with a smile. Suzimo had more spirit crystals than he could ever use and didn't care. He handed over 100 crystals, then placed a few dozen more on the table. "I ask, you answer," Suzimo said, pointing at the crystals. "If your answers are useful, they're yours." "Ask away," the worker replied, glancing at the spirit crystals. "You know about the heavenly bond cult, right?" Suzimo asked. At this, the worker's smile froze. He quickly recovered and said, "You're joking. I don't know anything about that, and I don't get involved. Let's not beat around the bush. I'm here for the heavenly bond cult and just want some information," Suzimo said, adding a few dozen more spirit crystals. "I really don't know much," the worker shook his head and said. "But if you really want to know, I can point you in the right direction. There's a book house in the east of the city. The owner there knows far more than I do. People call him Know-It-All. There's very little in the Mortal Dust Palace he doesn't know." "Book house," Suzimo murmured. "So, can I take these spirit crystals?" the worker asked cautiously. Suzimo waved his hand, not minding. He watched as the worker left cheerfully. Guyu couldn't help but say, "What are these people doing here in the Mortal Dust Palace? Living so cautiously. They'd be better off in the outside world, free and easy." "You can't say that," Great Wisdom replied. "Some people really have transcended worldly concerns. Others were simply lost for a moment, and by the time they realized it, they couldn't leave. Some were born here, descendants of others. They had no say in their birth and can only passively live in this world." "Isn't greed forbidden in the Mortal Dust Palace? How can there be descendants?" Guyu asked, confused. "Then may I ask, how were you born?" Great Wisdom chuckled. "There's no such thing as absolutes. No matter how strict the rules, there are always people who break them in secret. Let's eat first. Afterward, we'll check out the book house." "I don't want to waste too much time here," Suzimo said as the worker brought food to the table. After quickly finishing their lunch, the three left the inn and headed east. The book house in the east was well known in Marshall Flame City. They asked a few locals and quickly found it. The shop itself wasn't very eye-catching, hidden deep in a quiet alley. Far from the noisy marketplace, the alley was peaceful and secluded. When the three arrived, they found the book house to be extremely quiet inside. Its decor was simple, with an old plaque hanging crookedly above the entrance. Upon entering, they could smell the scent of books. It was a distinct smell of aged paper that sharpened the mind and brought clarity like a bubbling spring. A man dressed like a scholar sat up front, deeply engrossed in a book. Even as Su Zimo and the others entered, he didn't look up. "Are you the owner of this book house?" Great Wisdom bowed slightly and asked. "What brings you here?" The scholar slowly looked up and asked. His appearance was ordinary, but his eyes were deep and vast, as if he had truly read 10,000 books and traveled 10,000 miles. "We're hoping to ask a few questions, if it's convenient," Great Wisdom said. "All my answers are in these books," the scholar replied with a smile. "Whatever you wish to ask, you'll have to find the answers yourself."